It's part 2 of the Offid Valkyria Chronicles full game commentary, returning to right where we left off at the end of part 1, pretty much mid-sentence, where we've just done the Fouzen missions and then something bad happens. But is the game willing to commit to this happening? Let's see what I mean by that. It's time for more World War II analogy scenes. The Imperials killed everyone in the concentration camp before leaving. Not sure how, because I thought we captured the camp, and the subversive rewrite idea this brings up is that the Gallians were the ones who actually burnt the place down and killed all the inhabitants, and then just blamed the Imperials for it, blah blah blah. I'm too jaded to let there be any good guys in my story. Anyway, the actual point of this is that Rosie, our resident racist, sees how Zaka refuses to get angry at this because of the Darksons' basically extremist pacifism, perhaps suggesting they really weren't planning to destroy the world, or whatever it was. She seems to think that it was maybe wrong to burn those children alive. Yes, Valkyria Chronicles, this anime RPG, where war is a sport with minimal consequences, suddenly went here, mass execution of civilians by burning them alive, predicated on their supposed racial inferiority. You gotta hand it to them, most serious games wouldn't even let something like this happen. And neither will this one. What do I mean by that? Well, this scene cuts with merciless whiplash into the next one, where everyone's having a fun time and jaunty music is playing, and it says all the detainees are now in Fouzen or Randgries, and no one mentions the bad thing that may or may not have just happened. So yes, it really seems like they didn't want to commit to that scene happening, so they retconned it instantly. But they still had to leave the original scene in because they needed something there for the racism arc, as a catalyst for Rosie to decide to be less mean to the Darksons. It is strange looking back on it, just how much of the overall plot of the game is actually about either Rosie or Faldio. Like, Welkin and Alicia don't really have anything to do as characters, they aren't affected by the war at all. I guess this spirit continues into the next scene, where we first get news that Gallia wants to do this wild beach assault D-Day kind of thing on its own northern coast to bypass the enemy, and that we'll have to charge across open beaches covered by machine gun nests. Squad 7 is chosen as the sacrificial formation for this move, so there you have it. But the good news is that it's Valentine's Day or something, so let's have some cute moments first. Isara, with determination and character that can only be described as bulletproof, goes to Largo and Rosie and gives them these handmade dolls, a peace offering, saying she always wished they could be friends. Largo admits that perhaps that Fouzen may or may not have happened stuff changed his mind on the Darkson a bit, and he secretly likes Isara already, it seems. Rosie, though, cannot accept a gift from a stinking Darkhair. And you might think, so what was the point of the whole focus on her in Fouzen if that's her reaction now, like the arc didn't go anywhere? But I actually really like this bit. It's the best part of the racism arc. Rosie says she's not a big enough person to just change how she feels so quickly. A very reflective line, calling out how she sees who she really wants to be, but still struggles with that history of hers, of who she always was. It's a really grounded perspective, a grounded redemption foundation moment that gets my writerly stamp of approval. And this storyline will be back shortly. We'll see where they're going with this. Oh, and Alicia gives Welkin a rare bug that she caught herself. And they have a little scene here, and since I'm in a complimentary mood, in this scene, I like that neither of them are being tsundere or really engaging in any behaviors that would be categorized as anime bullshit. They both know they are a de facto couple, and they're in this weird limbo where they can't really make it official because of the war and such. That's my reading anyway. I'm sure at some point the game will go back to being about Welkin and Alicia, but for now it's still about Isara, as she comes to the rescue for our suicide mission by inventing smoke bombs the night before the assault. Not sure how no one invented this already, even by accident, but yes, if we smoke off the beaches, we can avoid getting shot while we cross. This will prove to be a very useful mechanic indeed. Here we are using it to bypass all the beach defenses in one fell swoop. Smoke prevents you from taking interception fire. And if you recall, one of the big reasons to even pay the enemy any attention in most missions is that you need to not die to interception fire while running to the end. So with smoke, your ability to skip stuff is boosted yet further. And we'll see loads of cases from here on when using smoke straddles the line between being really powerful, a really satisfying feeling tactic, and being an exploit that removes even more of the risk. Even more of the gameplay, you might say. Now, I haven't ranted for ages, so while I experiment with my attack up through the enemy camp and eventually decide to start again to make it go better, there is another mechanical consideration to combat that I've managed to avoid mentioning thus far. Topic: weapon ranges and interception fire stuff. All weapons in this game have an effective range, and how this is communicated to you is slightly strange. You'll aim at something, and it tells you how many shots from your current weapon will kill it. It's a very practical way of presenting damage. It just tells you what you need to know, doesn't it? Why say, they have 200 health, you'll do 205 damage? Just say, yes or no, will you kill them? So I like the idea, even though it hides the fact that RNG is involved, and you never get to see what the chances actually are. But this rant isn't about that miraculously, it's about the fact your shots to kill metric is actually based on the distance to the target. In a hard to analyze way, in practice you point your weapon at the enemy, and it says you need 12 shots to kill them, and you think, well, that sounds like a lot, maybe I'm outside of effective range. And then to find out whether that's the case, you have to actually move up to a new range you want to test, and then open the menu again, the problem being that moving means time passes and you get shot. So shuffling about trying to see where the damage cutoff is on a weapon will be extra punishing. This isn't something to experiment with, yet there is no other way to know what you need to know. And that's what I want to point my finger at here. It feels like it would be very easy to highlight whether your damage would increase if you moved closer in that UI element, or highlight targets that are in or out of your effective range in some way other than actually attempting to fire at them, then backing out when your soldier's psychic sense kicks in at that last moment, crucially a moment after you took all the interception fire. Speaking of which, your invisible range also determines the area you can intercept in, which in a true puzzle strategy game sense means we do 100% need to see it so we can use it to do tactics. As it stands, you vaguely guess how far out you can shoot when positioning interceptors, meaning you'll lose the satisfaction of setting something up where you know a particular path is covered and then see the fruits of that decision. A little anticipation is lost by the vague feeling created by withholding this decision-critical info. And the AI does get this info, because one thing you'll see fairly often is an enemy run towards you, then suddenly stop. The AI smells the edge of your interception ranges and might just stand there, to A, avoid interception fire, and to B, force you to move forward a step to get into effective range in your turn, allowing them to get a moment of interception fire on you. It's the sort of cheap baity move that normally in turn-based tactics games the player is doing against the AI. Well, I think you should be shown the ranges on stuff, that's what I'm saying. I know it would be a mess to actually highlight areas, but maybe a dotted line to indicate interception ranges or weapon damage soft cap areas. It's something I don't feel very strongly about, hence waiting all this time to mention this issue, because, in practice, to now undermine everything I just said, it's not that much of an issue if you're playing the game in a speedrunny, A-rank addict fashion. Because you tend to shoot at enemies less, so all the shooting mechanics don't really matter that much, you barely ever use interception fire, and when you shoot, it tends to be as part of some wild run that probably puts you at point-blank range with whatever you're firing at, or somebody blocking a capture, for example. So the subtleties of how range works in the game just don't come up because you're always at point-blank range. If you're not playing in this safe, standoffy sort of way that I secretly think would actually be better. It's just something to consider. If you're going to make a blitz system squad game, but you want it to be more of a tactics shooter, it would be nice to see the ranges on stuff, even just have it tell you somewhere. Also, if the submachine guns could have a range that is more than literally 4 or 5 meters, that would probably make sense. The console-focused design of having everything take place on very small maps, and hence at very short range, does undermine the mechanical seriousness of the game to some extent. I guess I want Valkyria Chronicles, but it's like Operation Flashpoint, if anyone remembers that. A squad shooter where you engage at like 200 meters, firing at a speck that looked like it moved. Boring, realistic shooters, but with anime girls and tsundere dialogue. I think that's still what I'm secretly going for here. This is now my second playthrough of the stage, as I adjusted my initial attack plan. Although Frisia got completely obliterated this time, the main thing I had spotted is that you need to get the Edelweiss to the middle of the map. First to kill a bunker that blocks your advance for the second half of the stage. This can be done in one hit because there's an explosive barrel behind the bunker, and the Edelweiss's mortar shot ignores physics, i.e. if you shoot the front of the bunker, the damage AoE still radiates out to behind it as if the bunker weren't there, thus blowing up the whole thing in one hit. I even tried making a snipe here with our fancy Imperial rifle, very powerful, very accurate. However, the enemy are saved by the inaccurate hitboxes of a nearby heavy tank. A wasted command point. However, we'll make it back right now as Alicia has an angle that will let me fire on the heavy tank's radiator. This is where the ZM car shines once again. It ends up taking 2 rounds of shooting, but broadly speaking, spending 2 points to kill a heavy tank is amazing. In a more normal run, you'd have to boost up a Lancer and run behind it. But Lancers run so slow, this could easily take like 4 or 5 points to pull off. If you were playing the game well, you'd probably just smoke off the tank and run past it. You don't need to do this at all. But again, I'm falling for that ever-present trap of wanting to solidify my position by killing enemies, forgetting that buffing and sprinting off into the distance is always going to be the easiest and most rewarded strat. I can't not play the game, it seems. I liked defeating this huge tank. The mission is vaguely in 2 phases, where you go north from the beach, and then you go southwest into an enemy base. We've reached the end of the first phase with the most tenuous foothold. We lost one of the 2 scouts we had on the front line, leaving only Alicia, the Edelweiss, and also Marina, our sniper. I tried to use her to clear Alicia's path a little, but I got RNG'd into wasting another command point on a failed snipe. This is where the game feels absolutely horrendous to play, when you come up with a plan, and the game just nopes you. You're supposed to take it in your stride, it's a character building experience, but as good as that might be, it doesn't stop it being unfun. This is a principle of game design I want to embrace more, to stop covering for surprise punishment mechanics or random problem generation in general, because it has its place, but one must never forget what is lost when you go down that path. The moment of, the disappointed poker face from the player, when the designer surprises them with an, oh, it was all for nothing, and the fun is that you don't get to have the fun type twist. And Valkyria Chronicles is, oh, they suddenly lay down evasion mechanic, is an example of that. Clearly, I'm going into a rant again. I told myself I'd keep the rants in the topic sections. There's darkness in my soul on this topic, obviously. It's leaking out. I got what I wanted in the end. A path was cleared. But we also need to bring up a smoke screen to avoid 2 more invincible machine gun positions on the final approach. And that's the other reason to bring the Edelweiss up to the middle of the map. Although you don't necessarily need this, actually. I then snuck Alicia into the enemy base. And there is a spot you can hide on the right that gives you an unguarded route right to the flag. The flag itself, though, was heavily guarded, so we need to approach this carefully. I tried using the sniper support order. This bonks a chosen enemy for a set amount of damage, and I think it ignores defense bonuses as well, making it good against crouching enemies. However, I'm using it on a guy who's by a flag, and flags heal all nearby troops at the start of each turn, so overall, this was 2 points spent achieving almost nothing. A running theme with this mission. I'm still experimenting and learning about pretty much everything that isn't running blindly forward with Alicia, and it always turns out to be a wrong move, so I should stick to running blindly forward with Alicia. Such is this game. The enemy is doing nothing in their turn, so we're gifted a full turn, and only one possible option now. Alicia needs to do everything on her own. Therefore, it's time to deploy a weapon more powerful than I could possibly imagine, which is going to make me rethink my strategy in future stages, the ICBM, the Intercamp Bulletproof Melchiot. You can receive several buffs from orders at once, and in particular you can take both defense up and resistance to interception fire. While you don't get to see any of the numbers, we're going to rapidly learn in practice that this can raise your effective defense higher than anything's attack number, meaning you take 1 damage from everything. With a couple of 100 HP to play with, that's a lot of bullets we can now have harmlessly ping off Alicia's face. Why can we do this? How can we do this? Does simply ordering someone to be bulletproof work? I don't know. They wanted a magic system in this game. For tactical purposes, they didn't really integrate it into the game or lore, so we can just do this, don't ask. As mentioned, I usually don't bother with these orders because I don't actually know what most of them even do. Or I don't know if the number changes they achieve are worth the cost, that's the actual issue. Is it better to buff attack for 1 point, or just spend that 1 point attacking a second time? Usually, I always thought it was best to ignore it all, however now we're learning the truth. The overlapping defense and interception resistance orders multiply the effectiveness of all this, and spending 3 points to be immortal is perfectly good value for money in any just run to the end type stage, which is most of them. In short order, Alicia defeats a few guys, including a named character, and swipes up a victory, giving us the A rank in 4 turns. I'm pretty sure 3 turns was on the table too, because we wasted time across the board. Although that's using the ZM-Car weapons, I'm sure 4 turns is more normal if you do this strat with regular guns, perhaps even requiring you to bring 2 scouts for the final push to get more grenades in. The bad news is that the ZM-Car weapons combined with order stacking is now blossoming in my mind as an infinitely powerful combo, and it's going to be hard to not use it. Luckily the game does have some non-run to the end stages in its back pocket, so we're not out of the woods yet. I just wished I learned the power of the orders earlier so I could be even more exploity. Maybe you don't wish that. And I'm sure using them early on would make up for not having ZM-Car weapons if you felt like breaking the balance in a more vanilla, intended feeling way. Well, forget all that, because the most important moment in the entire game is here. If you've played the game, this is the part you remember. Some of you have been waiting to see this, some of you have been dreading it. It's time for the scene. What I'll do is I will play the scene, and I want you, if you don't know what's going on, to try and identify the notable moment within this scene.
Well, you have already.
You mean the doll I made? I didn't know you kept it.
You said it was a protective charm, didn't you? I still owe you one from the feast, so anything you want, just name it.
Let me think. You know what? I'd like to hear you sing, Rosie.
Huh? You want me to sing?
Yes. You told me before that you always enjoyed it. I'd really love to hear you. I bet you're great.
Okay then. It's a promise. Isara.
Down!
The thwacking sound of the bullet impact, then the echoing crack of that resounding shot coming second. A hypersonic round, perhaps. Her body goes limp and she collapses, shocked into silence. A momentary sequence where the game's like, let's be real for a second, contrasting so heavily with how Alicia got shot 100 times by these same guys just a minute ago. A sequence that invites one to ask, was capturing the flag really enough to declare victory? Should we address the fact the enemy are actually still here? No time, Isara is unceremoniously killed out of nowhere with a unique and realistic gun sound and a unique and realistic approach to the danger of war. Yes, you cynics rant, it's a ludonarrative dissonance, a massive one. We'll get to that. But first, before I start complaining about the whole role and the use of Isara in the game, let's appreciate what we got for what it is. Because this scene goes extremely hard by its contrast to the rest of the game, and they don't leave it here, oh no, we need to complete the Rosie racism arc, and we do this with bombastic, unprecedented, almost jarring attention, and an equally jarring lack of attention from the supposed protagonist, but we'll get to that also. I present to you now the in-game Isara Tribute AMV.
I remember that you came and found me blinded by unshed tears.
Absolute cinema. Really, just out of nowhere, they pulled out at least some of the stops to make sure you remember this game is basically this moment, and then some filler on either side. Indeed, that's how such things feel when they happen. This moment is why so much of the story up to here focuses on Rosie, because this is her moment to be friends with a filthy dark hair, but it was too late. And even though everyone was mean to her, Isara was invincibly kind in return and got nothing at all for it. We can see that her life and death is pure injustice, and Rosie herself played a role in that injustice. Even that AMV was mostly shots where Isara is actually being bullied, being threatened with death, being ignored, witnessing the genocide of her ethnicity. It isn't really a happy moments reel if you look closely. It might just be that it's time to stop treating the Darkson like absolute trash. Maybe Isara isn't personally responsible for a historic cataclysm after all. That's the power of friendship right there, removing ideological blinders, ones you probably could have removed yourself if you thought about it, but, you know, we're all very busy. Let me introduce the next mission for some background footage. Then I'll give you my Isara dies rant. First, Isara is immediately replaced by this guy called Crease, and I'll tack on the Crease rant to my comments in a second. The next mission is to retake Brule once again. It implies this is a special Avenge Isara mission that we managed to organize so we can go take back her hometown to prove a point. This mission is actually very easy. However, if you try to play the game, not so much. So what I've got is a load of footage of me trying different routes through the town, trying to steadily advance and take bases and stuff. Then once in range of the final base, I made a run for it. Then I realized you can just make that run from the spawn point and do this all in one turn using an ICBM. So ultimately my commentary on this stage will just be nothing. You can skip the whole thing just fine. The only barrier is realizing you can do that, and realizing the game is not only willing to let you do that, it's the intended completion method because it gets you the A rank. Like, this is the complaint about the entire game, just personified in one stage, blah blah blah, we're not even going to talk about it. Let's go back to that hypersonic snap of both the air and our heartstrings, and think about what should be done with the Isara dies plotline. Topic. No! So you might have noticed Isara is killed to teach Rosie a lesson, to force some loss upon the squad in general, and to remind us that no matter what you do, cutscenes will do whatever they want. Yes, it's this game's Aerith dies moment, and I must point out the minor contradiction between the game and its plot here. We know that people don't die from being shot in this world. They even have an in-universe explanation for why that works. For Ragnite healing, canonically, countering cannons, it salves shots, it banishes bullets, it goobifies guns. And we know that it takes only about a minute to recover from taking a 120mm anti-tank shell to the face if a medic is around. I know, how annoying would it be to write this if you had to include the gameplay conceits in the plot, to write some situation where Isara dies because the Ragnite magic can't work. My general idea for this, of course I'm going to start giving you my ideas for this, would be to have Alicia try to administer the revival Ragnade because the medic is busy or what have you. But for some mysterious reason, Alicia seems to absorb the Ragnade pack's power so it doesn't flow into Isara, and she bleeds out amid the confusion about why it doesn't work this time. This of course will be revealed later to be because Alicia has a special relationship to Ragnite, the same special trait that allowed her to enter the Valkyria temple thing from earlier. Anyway, so it will then be both a hint of what is going to be revealed in the next chapter, and a twist where basically Alicia accidentally killed Isara, and Welkin has to deal with the conflict of interests there, to put it lightly. More generously, we can say that gameplay in this game is an abstract representation of what it canonically represents. So when you die and revive in combat, that represents that you didn't die. In other words, gameplay shows you the final result of battles, not the course or the details, and that's how we handwave everything there away. The game doesn't make this explicit, so I guess it's not the official explanation, but we're going to use it as one. But yes, this whole thing is another, well, why can't we use a Phoenix Down moment, in which the plot requires death in a world where death is a status ailment to be cured, and rules must be broken for dramatic purposes. Now, I wanted to say that Isara's death could use some beefing up in terms of impact, and I have 2 things specifically I wanted them to do with this. 3 things actually. The third one is just that I want the cast to react more and be permanently affected by this event, but I'll touch on that in a second. The 2 main things are game design points. Number 1 is that we need Isara to be present in the gameplay up to this point. Isara is technically around, driving Welkin, but it's always Welkin we see and hear when selecting that unit. Why? So they don't have to change anything for when Isara isn't the driver, of course. But no being lazy here, Isara should talk during the stages and have all the usual barks. Probably Isara would speak when you select the Edelweiss, and Welkin would speak when you fire, something like that. And include Isara's portrait in the relevant places too. That would help establish a bit of a connection to Isara as a real squad member, who you as a player are relying upon, which brings me to point 2, that being that mechanically you should lose something along with Isara. For example, the Edelweiss might have been much faster or had more abilities while Isara was the pilot. And then after this there's something you can't do or don't have, mechanically speaking, connecting you to the loss in a totally non-social and practical way. This loss for the cast should have a consequence for the player. I like the idea that Isara came in clutch and saved you in the past, like she can heal the tank in an emergency or something. I mean came in clutch outside of the plot, that is, because you could bring up these smoke bombs as an example of that. Came in clutch for you in your experience, or at least is likely to do so. And you end up feeling you only got this far because she's in your squad, creating a daunting feeling about carrying on further without her. That's what I'm going for here. There's probably 1,000 approaches to do something like this. But this is a classic commentary case where all I need to do is point at the game and say, do something, without coming up with anything, because we're just competing with nothing here. Any steps forward will help. So yes, Isara will be as absent from the gameplay as she was before in many ways. And while characters will say, let's win this battle for Isara's sake, in the future, they won't be changed by these events. They needed to grow up, not sure if that's the right term for it, in life. Attaining the character of an adult is to accumulate memories of stresses and trauma that make figurative scars on the mind that gradually change your instinctive behavior, slowly eliminating behaviors adults then call childlike, such as being happy, being interested in things. Seeing people die in front of you is a classic example of such a trauma, and jaded old man Devin wants to see the plot have our upbeat and optimistic heroes undergo a change in attitude, and finally confront reality here. There's a thing upcoming where Welkin will be like, Isara's dead, but this flower I planted did grow, proving new life is still emerging, and that's a happy thing. I'd rather see Welkin be like, I don't care about nature now, all this new life, it mocks me, and idolizing it won't bring her back. You might think, isn't that too much for a game? That very much isn't about that. To that I say, okay, then don't even go there. It's like my complaint here is they started going down a road that goes so much further. And I'm almost offended they didn't go further. Probably to make writing and producing the game easier. Like, loss having consequences means spending money from the producer's point of view. And they aren't going to sign off on having, like, before and after mechanical changes, that's annoying. And having the main cast get PTSD is probably too depressing for a, like, what if war was a great team-building exercise kind of plot. Well, it left something to be desired with me, and there you have it. Now let me tell you another version of this Isara dies story beat. Bang! It again begins with Isara being killed by a sniper who was possibly aiming for Rosie but was too shaky to hold the weapon straight, likely due to being wounded in the battle. Rosie kills the sniper, then tries to stop Isara's bleeding, practically begging her to stay alive, but to no avail. Isara dies with a smile, because she finally saw that Rosie cared about her after all. Welkin only learns about this later because he was busy overseeing the raising of the flag and celebrating his glorious A-rank victory. Faldio rushes in with the news. Welkin is horrified and becomes consumed by a grief he cannot process. Still, he acts professionally around the squad, similar to the game, and doesn't seem too bothered at first glance. But he soon admits to Alicia in a private moment that he wants to express himself about Isara's loss. But nothing ever comes out. Something is consuming him on the inside. Alicia tells him it's okay to grieve, and finally leaves him alone in silence. No squad in sight, no responsibilities. Almost immediately, Welkin has a massive breakdown, collapsing to the ground, screaming in throat-tearing outbursts. He's finally completely broken. He drags himself up, perhaps hours later, and is brought back to normal only by relying on his budding relationship with Alicia, who reminds him of the life and happiness still out there in the world. The squad is also devastated, especially the other child soldiers Isara was friends with. One of them screams at Welkin during the funeral, blaming him for leaving her vulnerable, and berating him for seeming not to care about her death. Welkin remains completely bottled up, and simply orders everyone to forget about Isara, himself included. Although he will still be haunted by the memories of her and that day, Rosie, too injured and too traumatized, doesn't attend the funeral at all, and then also has a breakdown in hospital over her own role, blaming herself for Isara's death, and is reminded endlessly of her own behavior by the little doll Isara gifted her, a sign of Isara's unlimited kindness. Eventually, she comes out to sing her song to the grave alongside Isara's would-be boyfriend among the child soldiers long after the funeral. The militia general discovers the squad are mourning a filthy Darkson and personally starts tearing apart their memorial, only for Rosie to violently intervene, seizing Isara's Darkson shawl from the general and getting into a fight with him. Before Rosie can be court-martialed, Welkin steps in and takes all responsibility for her actions, being left with the threat of being executed for Rosie's defense of Isara. Isara is posthumously promoted to Master Sergeant, becoming a superior to Rosie. The whole affair is unforgettably sad and brings out radical changes in how all of those close to Isara now see the world. What a strange and more normal feeling depiction of the tragic end of a character, and the final corner in an arc about Darkson discrimination. Did the famous writer Offid pull that out of his hat? No, that was a rough outline of how the Valkyria Chronicles anime adaptation presents the death of Isara. Yes, there is already an official rewrite of this story. It's much more serious and substantial. I've only seen bits of it actually, I'm probably not even remembering this correctly, but after seeing how differently the game did it, I feel I now need to go back and watch the whole thing and get the more thoughtful portrayal of both Rosie and Welkin's reactions to this whole thing. It's exactly what was sorely missing from the game. Somebody like me has already been through this plot and come up with all the things that need to be changed, so I don't have to. Go watch this TV show if you can find it somewhere. And a final point to make. Isara's replacement. It's this guy called Kreese. It looks like it would be pronounced Kreis, but it's Kreese. At the end of the Brule mission, Welkin is like, "Well done, Kreese, you did it," even though he didn't do a goddamn thing. You're nothing compared to her, Kreese. Nothing. With Brule captured, Welkin and Alicia can finally come back in as the main characters and look out at their half-destroyed town. They've lost Brule and they've lost Isara, but Welkin reminds Alicia they can still make new things. We shall rebuild the mill. We'll make a robot Isara, I suppose. We can still get it all back. They look at a flower they planted months ago and see that new things can be created, even amid the destruction. It's a very positive spin, but I see it more as like patronizing. The promise that flowers still grow and maybe we can build a new mill. Does that make up for all the stuff that just happened? I might be a cynic, but this is so uncynical that it's rude. Welkin says he hasn't lost his mind thanks to Alicia, and generally they have this would-be romantic moment. Welkin is about to walk off cluelessly, but Alicia pursues and manages to at least force an attempted hug-like gesture out of the situation. Well anyway, the two sides in the war seem to have agreed upon a massive final battle out on an open plain, so everyone's gonna go get stuck in. Our general strategy is to just run at them, and while the plot is framing this as careless, cruel, incompetent, that's a dissonance because just running at them is the most highly rewarded strategy in the game. They could do a nice thematic thing here where the game tells you to capture the flag ASAP like usual, but it's literally impossible, and you have to learn to disobey orders, including orders from the game itself. That would be some art, don't you think? So yes, we've got some fairly bulletproof kids in the platoon, we'll just run at them and see what happens. We also learned the Empire's strategy. Just deploy their invincible Valkyria that can kill everything instantly, and is actually, literally bulletproof. And everything else proof, for that matter. Well, that sounds like a winning move. There is this very cool cutscene, depicting a very different kind of war to the one we're seeing everywhere else. With this Battle of Kursk-looking combined arms battle, they're not even waiting for us to take our turn while standing perfectly still. How uncivilized. And yes, the Valkyria can kill us all, so what exactly can we do about that? Well, two things rescue us here. One is that she has to work her way along the line, killing everything, and she'll get to us last, meaning we get a period of the mission where we don't have to deal with her. Thing two is that, as uncivilized as we might be, we've still all agreed that if someone puts a Garlean flag in the Imperial trenches, then we win and they have to stop killing us. Yes, it's a capture the flag mission, so no matter what tricks the enemy have, we can still win if we just run at them. Indeed, our dumbass general has hit upon the actual solution, so let's get running. The gameplay of situations like this is essentially all about probing the stage, finding out where all of the enemies are, and then restarting to make a perfect run forward that kills who you need to kill and ignores everything else, and tries to rush their camp ASAP. Although that said, I am being naive here, because while the game is like, oh, we must act quickly to win before the Valkyria gets here, in actuality, Silvaria's appearance is linked to your progress, not time. As in, if you move faster, the time limit goes down faster. You can't actually gain an advantage here, because the game needs to prepare its upcoming you win, you lose cutscene, where a specific outcome to the battle is required no matter what you do. You probably know the score if you've played a video game. Therefore, my Girls on Tour 3-scout attack goes almost too well. I used rifle grenades to clear the dangerous final corner, and was just about able to get Ike here to the flag at the end of turn 1. This disables some rocket salvo mechanic that I never saw because I'm too fast for that nonsense, but also it spawns Silvaria in the middle of the map, and spawning her at the end of your turn means she'll get to act right away. The real danger is actually that Welkin also spawns in the Edelweiss out in no man's land, and the enemy can spend their whole turn just firing at him, and you get game over if Welkin ever dies, so this is an issue. I'm saved by an annoying subtlety of the game, track armor. 2 of the enemy shots hit my tracks, and while they are destroyed, if your tracks are down, any other attacks that hit them do virtually no damage to the tank's overall health, creating these massive, ultra-armored strips down both sides that don't count as part of the tank. Very handy indeed, as losing here was certainly on the table. 2 regular shots to the body are avoided thanks to our tracks. And it's not like we need the tracks. Our only hope here is to take our Girls on Tour into the final camp during turn 2. Welkin shouldn't need to take a turn. It's useful he's here though, because you can't use orders while he isn't present, meaning he can still shout at the Girls on Tour and tell them to be more bulletproof for our final assault. It's a little thing called leadership. You wouldn't understand. I had this vague plan which, as per usual, slightly breaks the official best practices. I'm going to try and use a sniper. Like Lancers, snipers can barely move, so using them for anything is already a bad idea. It takes a few points just to get line of sight on something. The idea was that I would clear out the enemy base a little before charging in, to avoid unhappy accidents. Have I already forgotten that you can be bulletproof for 3 command points whenever you want? Yes, apparently, or at least I was probably thinking I should take some of the precautions. Or maybe again, I wanted the fun factor of finding a cool angle and landing a snipe. Well, I hope not. We're not here to have fun. We're here to get an A, and hence get money, something something tiger parenting. Anyway, the terrain didn't give me the line of sight I wanted. I wasted those points. But now we've got Frisia and Alicia moving in, we've got the all units defend order on, and we can pop a caution on Alicia. And she also triggers her resist crossfire potential, which does the same thing again. And then it's fine to walk out in front of this heavy tank and stormtrooper and start blasting away. We actually need to kill this tank to take the flag, usually an issue, but the ZMK HG cheat mode is now going to save us. because it's powerful enough to kill a heavy tank in 2 mags. I could even kill it in 1 mag in this situation if I used a little finesse, and I'll show you how to do that later on. If we didn't have the ZM-Car8, we could bring up the more normal ZM-Car3 or 4 by this point in the story, and use a certain technique plus anti-vehicle orders to maybe kill this thing. I do feel we've cheated though. It's not like I would survive the next turn here, so a slower strat would fail. Our only hope would be for the tank to move off the point, and then not shoot at the Edelweiss, then for the AT guns to shoot the Edelweiss's tracks again without damaging it. That would give us a turn 3 and we'd be fine. Plausible. Anyway, the Empire retreated because we changed the flags, but we still lost the battle, as Varrot noted, because the Valkyria killed everyone except us. Oops. While we're chatting about what we're going to do about this, it happens again. Can we get any kind of vigilance for snipers, please? This time it's Alicia getting shot, and this is a cutscene bullet. It's fatal. The team is at least somewhat concerned, but after seeing the performances in the anime, all of this just comes across as, oh no! It's not so bad this time because they take Alicia to the medic, and she'll be fine after a little sleep. The actual issue turns out to be that the bullet was a brand new Gallian design. The enemy can't have captured these yet, so someone on our side must have fired the shot. Who could it be? Is there a named character we can pull out of the woodwork for this one? Before we answer that, we also find out what the General's plan to turn this battle around is. We're going to run at them even harder. Yes, the strategy now is to just send everything into a final charge and maybe we'll win somehow. Again, the game's supposed to imply this is a bad idea, but Welkin's rise to fame as a commander was based entirely on doing this, so there's something to it. But here's the real twist. The mysterious named character places a Regnite lance on Alicia, and suddenly she begins glowing blue. She has now turned into a Valkyria as well. Then back out on the field, we're ready to go out and get obliterated, only to be saved by Alicia stumbling out, ready for a flashy anime battle with Silvaria. The full story is something that was hinted at earlier. You might have seen that Silvaria stabs herself before going into battle, because it turns out that the Valkyria's secret powers have a massive downside. You can only use them if you're on the verge of death. And that's why a mysterious hero decided to shoot Alicia. This enables her to gain these powers when she touches the Regnite Lance, which raises the question of who else actually has these powers or could get these powers, because we're not exactly going around testing everyone. It might be that being a Valkyria is common, just that most people go their whole lives without nearly dying while also holding antique weapons. That's the real takeaway here that flew over everyone's heads. Alicia then defeats Silvaria by making her drop her weapons, at which point we need to urgently steal them or kill her. But we're busy gawking, and the next thing we know, we're in a battle with Alicia on our side and Silvaria nowhere to be seen. Alicia will walk around obliterating enemies for you here, which is nice, but it made me think the game was going to be generous. This battle, this map, has very few enemies on it, and the flag you need to capture loses most of its defenses right away thanks to Alicia in the first turn. So you can easily run forward and quote-unquote win in your first couple of moves, let alone the first turn. And I thought, well, yes, after having us face that difficult battle against invincible opponents, even though we skipped most of it or all of it, the game now has this catharsis section where you are the invincible one. However, to avoid it being so easy that it's boring, the mission itself is then really short. It's here as an art piece to represent how awakening the Valkyria is turning things around for you, giving you a free, easy victory on this simple map, and that's why it doesn't appear like you have to do anything in this stage. Nope, I was completely bamboozled by my meta game design assumption nonsense. Taking the enemy base triggers a massive ambush, and the real mission is to defeat the special ultra tanks leading this ambush. They're on the edges of the map, so just getting to them will take ages. And they have plenty of turns to blast away at us while we try to get something anti-tank flavored anywhere near them. I only have one advantage the enemy lack. Time travel. I can just do this again, knowing the trap in advance, but yes, I was totally hit by this trap. I really didn't suspect a thing. even though I've actually played the game before, by the way. I completely forgot that as well. I thought it was all part of the game developer's scheme to be nice to me. But as I keep reminding you, we don't deserve nice things. And in the face of adversity, what do we turn to? Exploits. Of course, we know the enemy spawn points now. This allows us to think about placing all of our units on those spawn points for a counter ambush, and then taking the base to trigger it. That's the game plan. But is there a way of doing this that is A, fast enough to get an A rank, and B, powerful enough to actually defeat the Ultra Tanks? My first plan was to rely on the good old ZMK-8G, so I got some more of them and then put scouts in position. The idea being that moving anything but scouts for the counter ambush would take so long to set it up that it might actually be slower than just spawning the enemy immediately and letting them drive towards you before you commit to fighting them. It turns out these tanks don't take any damage at all from even the ZMK-8G. You have to use anti-tank weapons, so I'm screwed. You need to use lancers and your own tanks. So while I slowly organise that, there's an unrelated rant from earlier I need to make. Topic: it's not World War II Part 2. It probably is edition. So in this commentary I've highlighted loads of ways in which the game is supposed to be a World War II analogy, but I still wanted to hit you with another way, in which it's like a different war. So let me get my point out in the open. We can all agree it's not what they were going for, then we can move on and be all the more enlightened for it. We've waited a long time for this, so here we go. Much earlier, I highlighted my first clue. That's that the continent has a shared language, shared naming conventions, even a shared accent if you want to get really absolutist in our interpretation of the game. Another more recent clue is that we know in the history of this continent, it was conquered by the Valkyria, who, as it will turn out, are peoples from a Swedeway-like landmass not shown on the map. The Vikings, basically. They took over everything, laying the groundwork for why the entire continent has these cultural links. Along the way, they supposedly defeated the Darkson, described in the game as being the indigenous Europeans, and indigenous is a key word I'll invoke for my argument. Supposedly, the Darkson tried to blow up the world and such, and the Valkyria stopped them, but if you haven't noticed yet, it appears to be it's the Valkyria themselves who possess the magical weapons and invincibility and such. The inevitable twist here is that the Darkson Calamity was the event in which the Valkyria wiped out most of the Darkson, so they could colonize Europa. That's how I'm going to frame it. It was a calamity for the Darkson, not of Darkson design. In-universe, no one actually knows any of this. Neither the Valkyria nor the Darkson preserved any of this history. And the only thing people agree on is that they don't know what happened in the past on this continent, implying it was all a long time ago, this stuff. This does already start to undo my observations, because if this conquest happened, say like 1,000+ years ago, there probably wouldn't be a unified language and culture resulting from it still existing today, so that wasn't the cause of it, which I'm going to try and claim. Well, I'm going to pull something out of thin air to support my theory now. And this new piece of information is that the rivalry between the regions of Europa is very recent. What I believe the history of Europa would be here is that they were medieval, if you like, for a long time after the Valkyria took over, and history was lost, like there was no sophisticated education or anything like that. And the idea of using Ragnite to do things was forgotten in some way. But the world was peaceful enough that a single kingdom held power the whole time, and this is where this unified culture we see in the game came from. This 1,000+ years of peaceful unity in Europa, a cultural unity that is, because of course the Darkson were held segregated the entire time, and the segregation was completed during that time as well, perhaps. So we've now got two cultures living on top of each other, essentially. And later on, Ragnite power is rediscovered, like this magic system essentially comes back into play, and this starts some kind of industrial revolution. And this causes the fiefs of this big kingdom to become autonomous, and some of them become democracies. The local nobility become the various royal families we see today across Europa. Only now there are these massive incentives for everyone to fight over Ragnite and over industrial power, and this causes the old union to fall apart and leaves the Empire and the Federation as a sort of Western and Eastern Roman Empire type deal, where like the main government split into two main governments, and then there's a bunch of other small ones. This happened recently enough in the timeline that all of these big powers still share a language and such. What a huge reach I have to make to justify the game not bothering to invent fantasy languages, I know, but we're going to make it. The point being that while I call this a Western and Eastern Roman Empire type deal, it's actually a little bit more like a Union versus Confederacy type deal. Two governments that are ultimately breakaways from a foreign colonial power, the Valkyria being real-life Europeans in this analogy. And of course, this is where we cling to that word indigenous, and we say that the Darkson are now supposed to be like Native Americans, mostly killed off by the power of the colonial forces, and then held as racially inferior, deserving of their underclass status, however it came about. It must have been self-inflicted, I guess we forgot. Classic history myth-making stuff there. I don't know enough to make a full connection, like enough about the real-life stuff I'm trying to make an analogy to. But I sense a vague link between, say, the Darkson shawls and possible patterns or designs of Native American inspiration. So yes, this European war looks a lot like, in a very vague sense, an alternative history where the first war referenced in the game, the First European War, was like the US Civil War. But it ended in a stalemate, with both governments still active, cementing the division of the continent into two different powers, but both still descended from the same colonial influence, so they speak the same language and they're kind of the same. We don't know in-game what the First European War was supposed to be about canonically, but to make my theory work, I'm going to again pull something out of thin air. This next fact is that the First European War was about the Empire's desire to use Darkson as slave labour, so now we're connecting it a little bit more to the real Civil War in the US. And to be fair, we do see the Empire using Darkson as slave labour in the game, so we've got some actual connection there. Then the game itself is showing us the alt history Second US Civil War analogy, where the Confederacy has gotten pretty powerful and starts invading stuff to get more resources, especially with the whole "there's only 10 years of oil left" analogy that I made before. And would you look at that? One side has blue uniforms, the other side grey. I mean, again, that's pretty much the only real piece of evidence we've got right here. Could there be something to this theory? Well, only if you ignore all the stuff that's more explicitly supposed to be World War II. But there are some US Civil War vibes in here as well, I claim. I don't have no point at all here, that's what I think. The conflict between the probably somewhat recently divided lands with a closely linked colonial past, with debates over whether the ethnic former majority, which they might have genocided into being a minority, should now be treated as slaves, or more progressively, allowed to be normal citizens, but you can call them slurs to blow off steam. We're sort of like throwing in the whole slave trade thing into the Native American thing here, so we have to really work to mash all of the racism stuff together in this analogy, but I don't know, it's vague enough already. There might be something to all of this. Blue and grey uniforms! Blue and grey uniforms! As a side note, back in the day, I remember thinking that the Darkson were supposed to be Japanese when I originally played it, and it was like some kind of Westerbo self-insert racism fantasy of some kind, mainly because of the focus on having dark hair, an Asian trait, set in contrast with the red hair of racist Rosie, a very Euro-Celtic look, and Rosie basically means red, while Darkson would probably mean dark. So it was an ethnic battle told by hair colours, where the intended audience of the game, the Japanese, would sympathise with the Darkson in some way. Playing the game again, it totally doesn't feel like that's what they were going for. The Darkson are more like the Romani or something if we actually decide to treat the setting as a Europe analogy. And we could even accept the slight inkling that it is supposed to be a World War II analogy, and say it's more like they're supposed to be Jewish. And yes, the last one is almost certainly the primary thing it was quote-unquote supposed to be like. But I think that's also the boring answer here. To be fair, the game never makes the link to anything. We don't learn anything about the Darkson other than that they accessorize differently, and they have black hair. Well, hopefully I've planted some seeds of doubt that all of this anime World War II stuff isn't quite as World War II-y as first advertised, if you really think about it. Think too much, some would say. I'm OffED, and I think about the plot implications of the localization team getting Steve goddammit Blum to play characters from every part of the game world using the same voice so that you don't have to. The counter-ambush works out with a 2-tank plan. We can use the Shamrock, the light tank piloted by Zaka, played by Steve Blum, to do the more distant ambush, as its movement is less trash. If you're willing to spend loads of points, it certainly moves further than a Lancer could, because a Lancer's AP falls off with repeated movement faster, so after 3 points of movement you're barely moving at all, but the tank can still trundle along after spending like 6 points. So it's really expensive to do this, but if all you do is move, and you don't need to be efficient, it's better with vehicles. Does that make sense? It doesn't need to. It worked. We got the A rank, it was very cheesy. Let's get back to business. Because Alicia is actually a Valkyria, what are we going to do about that? She doesn't retain her memory. Slash was drugged up on morphine from being shot just before, and maybe that interfered with the Ragnite or something. She goes back to bed, and we next check in with the legendary hero Kreese, who has a breakthrough. The bullet that hit Alicia came from a unique rifle that records show was recently acquired by none other than the actual main character, Faldio. Welkin sneaks into Faldio's office and finds practically a confession written in full detail lying around, so that's handy. Faldio also translated all of the Valkyria inscriptions, discovering those secrets about the Darkson Calamity I mentioned before. Although this doesn't really factor into the plot all that much, or at all, come to think of it. The main discovery is just this thing where if you nearly kill someone who has the ancient power, they might turn into a Valkyria. So let's start blasting our own side in the search for a human superweapon. Next stop, the captain's office. Faldio's there, and he admits he did indeed shoot Alicia. Welkin punches him in the face and asks why he had to shoot her. Faldio will commence his "it was the only way" speech. But Best Boy Faldio is actually wrong here. His speech focuses on the fact we needed a Valkyria to win, but Welkin's question was, why did you have to shoot her? Raising a very good point. If we needed a Valkyria so much, and Faldio was pretty sure his method would work, he could tell everyone. Why keep it a secret? Alicia might even have volunteered to try anything. In the face of basically certain death on the battlefield, that was the alternative. And even if you want to keep it a secret, in case no one believes you, there must have been ways to get Alicia to a sufficiently wounded state without shooting her, or at least shoot her at point-blank range to ensure it's not fatal. I don't know. There were other ways to approach getting a Valkyria, so while Faldio is correct that we did need one, Welkin is correct that randomly shooting an ally without saying anything about it first is a bad idea, even if it somehow leads to victory. We need a plot reason here why Faldio had to secretly enact his plan and had to do it from afar, and have him own up to the risk that Alicia could have died for no reason if it went even slightly wrong, and he accepted that this was the risk of the shoot her with a high-powered experimental sniper rifle but try not to actually kill her approach. Varrot confusingly states that they were both right and both wrong, which is probably a good summation. Faldio gets indefinite imprisonment. Welkin even bags 24 hours for attacking Faldio just now, so at least the principle of don't attack your allies is being upheld at all levels here. This situation then fizzles out, because it's time to talk about something else. It feels like there was still more to mention, more to explore about Alicia actually being the chosen one, and about us actually discovering that the Darks and Calamity stuff was fake, but that's so far away from the plot now we don't need it anymore. The racism part is over, just forget about all that. There was more content for it, but they forgot to use it. Here's what's going on now. The Empire has retreated from Gallia entirely, but their army is still on the border. Apparently we still have enough stuff to attack them, so we're going to pass through some fortifications and try to take out their HQ. And by we, I mean Alicia and maybe 1 or 2 other Squad 7 troops. The General is overjoyed to be sending us on what he thinks is a suicide mission, and it's a nice ludo-narrative dissonance, with Varrot being all, we can't just run into a hailstorm of bullets. Actually, Captain, let me tell you a few things about how we won all of those battles back there. You really don't need to worry. We're gonna both run at them and drive a train at them. It's a great plan. But first, we get a glimpse of the Imperial plan. Maxi thinks both sides are now equal in strength, and plans to unlevel the playing field with another secret, ordering Selvaria to use the so-called Final Flame. Whatever this is, Selvaria will have to die to achieve this, but she cannot defy her prince and falls to her knees in shock, boobily. Back in our camp, it's mentioned that maybe we should use Alicia's Valkyria form again to win the battle, and Vulcan says we don't need that, thanks to his faith in our natural abilities. There's a problem here, isn't there? Topic: don't ignore that Alicia is a Valkyria. This is where writer Devin steps in and says, well, hold on, you can't have a twist as large as Alicia is basically a god, and just have the plot and the game continue as planned. Wouldn't Gallia 300% take her out of the unit and treat her differently? Wouldn't working out how to easily activate and control her powers be more important than anything else? Attacking this base does nothing in comparison. Who cares if we control the border right now? If we can get Alicia working, so to speak, or even get more Valkyria, we can usher in a new age of calamity and destroy everything. I'm being facetious, but that's what I think Gallia's higher-ups would try to do in this situation. Start an arms race, effectively. Then, of course, your plot can become that Squad 7 goes rogue and fights the Gallians to save Alicia from being experimented on or creating WMDs, things like that. There's your anti-nationalist subversion I apparently really wanted to have in my rewrite. Then on the gameplay side, I guess it's too annoying to have all the stages to be totally different to account for the player having an invincible unit. So I have sympathies for not doing this, not throwing everything out the window. My crossover solution would probably be that Alicia is taken away from you, but then is used as a sort of support weapon to achieve certain things, but it depletes her health, something like that, where you can call down artillery fire from her lance, but it hurts her, or makes her vulnerable to enemy attacks that game over you, something. There's a moment where Alicia is overwhelmed by the way everyone now treats her as special and expects more of her. Not seen here. Like they wrote about this happening but didn't actually have it happen. The game's about to do something with Alicia's character arc, I guess, but then it decides against it. They weren't going to go here, as it turns out. We never see people treating Alicia differently, and after Welkin's helpful advice of sucks to be you, basically, Alicia doesn't express her concerns anymore. There's some sort of plot thing you can sense here where Alicia would get elevated to celebrity status and confides in the Queen, who herself has similar issues and is supposedly a Valkyria herself, but we'll get back to that later. And she uses the advice that Welkin gave her earlier to be more chill about it, and gets a new perspective that she passes on to Alicia, and in that way Welkin saves Alicia indirectly while out of contact with her. And Alicia's like, oh, Welkin, and breaks out of the military lab to rescue him from some cliffhanger situation, something like that. Ties in some old stuff, doesn't ignore entirely the new stuff. There's a plot available floating just off the game's shores. You might want to make some game as well. Remember, guys, this is a game. Some of these plot events should do something to the game. Like that, I guess, is the real point to make. None of this applies, and that's why I'm talking about it. Let's go. Here we go with the attack. The map is covered in stuff. It's a cool setup. Not cool enough to actually play with it, though. Let's skip everything. It's a slight variant on the run to the point mission design, because you have to run to 3 points, opening 3 doors, so the army can drive a train into the fort. That does mean it's marginally less exploity, as we'll be forced to engage with more of the map. And this is a good hint for how all of the other Capture the Thing missions could go, probably adding that you need to hold them against attack, the points you take that is, for an extra turn or something, to encourage some gameplay. In the game, you know. I'm going to fire off my intercamp bulletproof Ica, the ICBA, I can't be asked, as Ica is a scout with naturally high HP to begin with, making her a decent choice for stupid guess-based strategies. Getting the first switch is trivial, but the direct route to the second one is blocked by a massive minefield. Here's our decision point. Do we go around it, or do we try to very carefully find some perfect route through that doesn't trigger the mines? I went for option 2, then found immediately that the mines' hitboxes are larger than the mines and we get hit by loads at once, and Ica is vaporized. Next attempt Alicia is pondering the minefield, and I saw you only need to cross a short distance to get out of the field here in the corner. While there are 2 or 3 mines in our way, hitting the first one sends Alicia flying gracefully over the others, surviving with a tiny bit of health. But we're clear of the field. We even hit the first aid boost potential, allowing her to immediately get most of her health back. We then run forward for the second switch, stopping to capture a base on the way, ignoring the heavy machine gun rounds bouncing harmlessly off us. The in-place guns can't turn, so running past them leaves you safe, and the other guy here is facing the wrong way, so we're fine. The third switch, though, is on the other side of the door in front of us, and I didn't see any clever way of getting across. Eventually, I start going the probably intended route of going right out to the edge of the map to bypass the wall. By the time Alicia is seriously out of AP, I still have points to spend. So I kept dumping them into her and shuffling forward tiny distances. This is less crazy than it looks, because Alicia has a double movement potential, which means that sometimes, when you hit 0 AP, it will randomly jump right back up to full, which would allow us to finish the mission right now, effectively. Not really sure how to trigger it or the chances. All I know is I didn't get it, so I used billions of points achieving not that much. With Alicia now standing near the end, but not near enough, we have to let the enemy take a turn, as the massive risk is they're going to kill Alicia, and then I'll have absolutely no other options since everyone else is still at the spawn point. And there is a tank right in front of Alicia. This could be bad. Well, the tank first dawdles around for 20 seconds doing nothing, then suddenly blasts Alicia with a direct hit. She survives because that tank round was much less powerful than a single bullet. Rant, rant, rant. Isara, we haven't forgotten you. Then the tank fires again and misses. That's our ticket to victory. We have a whole turn's worth of command points to waste, so we can heal Alicia fully, activate ICBM mode with caution and defense up. Then she will run effortlessly through hails of fire from machine guns, barely even losing a fraction of her HP. The poor sap guarding the switch is sent to the Shadow Realm by the ZM-Car HG. I don't think you need to do this because it's not a base we're taking. I don't think they block you touching the switch. Don't know, either way, we've opened the gates for a train to drive into the fort. And the fact that the mission ended with Alicia standing in the line of sight of half the enemy army can be safely ignored. Welkin was right. We really don't need Valkyria. We never did. Someone drives a train into the enemy base, opening the final gate for us to storm in and perhaps achieve something. We are interrupted by Silvaria, who declares she will not even go Valkyria mode for this battle. Exceedingly generous, really. That'll make the next battle a fair bit easier. Thanks, I guess. We're kind of stuck here game design-wise, because if you want to have a boss battle against a character who's established as being invincible, you have to not have them be invincible for some reason. And instead of thinking of a reason, you can also just do it for no reason. That saves time. You might argue, were you an ardent defender of this terrible game, like me, that she is trying to lure the Garleans in by pretending to give them a chance to kill her, perhaps thinking the Garleans think she is a valuable target. However, the Garleans don't think that, so it'll fall flat. But still, from Silvaria's perspective, turning herself into a vulnerable and A-rankable boss battle might be a scheme to enhance the power of a move she plans for later. Hold this thought. And yes, it's a boss battle with Silvaria now, although I'm going to be skipping this one even harder than normal, after finding a decent workaround to the long-sounding advance through the fort and flank her plan the game proposes to you. You're meant to take bases in the top corners, but the gimmick is that if you move at all, you'll get blasted by Silvaria's massively long-range interception fire. I remembered this by the looks of things because I first started moving the tank up to see if I could maybe blast away with the tank cannon and avoid risking the troops. It's not really an option because the accuracy isn't there, even with the max accuracy build on the tank I'd set up. But I think I also remembered the other key to this mission. Silvaria has 100% evasion. That means you can only shoot at her from outside of her line of sight, which you can do by either A, getting behind her, or B, running someone out of cover off to the edge of the map, so she turns that way to shoot at them. Or, special easier option C, dump smoke everywhere. Yes, you can be out of her line of sight inside smoke, so I wanted to try sniping from inside the smoke and somehow working out where she was. because of course I also don't have line of sight here, so that's my challenge. I was sitting there trying to get some reference points and seeing whether there were any clues about where to shoot through the smoke. The problem is I have the smoke in front of me. When I move forwards into the smoke, we get something more like what I'm thinking of. You can sort of see the outside world, but as far as mechanics are concerned, that outside world can't see you. And yes, it's possible to find Silvaria, and bang. Our first shot took off more than half her health, as Marina here has that cheap post-game sniper rifle. I figured, well, one more shot and that'll be it. But then she starts dodging my attacks. I tried again from a different location in the smoke, and then it was another dodge. I think once you've hit her, that soldier is revealed mechanically, and the dodge chance kicks in again. So next I use the order Concentrate Fire, which gives a soldier 100% accuracy, and brought up Alicia with the ZMK HG, all well and good, but I totally forgot about weapons having ranges. So yes, this actually does absolutely nothing at all, thanks to the ZMK weapons having gigantic damage drop-off compared to regular rifles. It happened. The ZMK HG was bad for once. Anyway, I eventually brought up Catherine here with my second ZM sniper rifle, and blew Silvaria's head off. So that's problem solved, right? No. We grabbed the A rank, all well and good, having skipped perhaps more of this stage than in any other chapter, yet we are unfortunately facing another you win, you lose story beat. So let's see this victory turn to ash. Silvaria and Alicia are suddenly having a casual chat about what it's like to be a Valkyria. Silvaria was doing all of this because she loves Maxi. I don't think the game really gets into it, but Silvaria's backstory is she was rescued by Maxi from some torturous child experiment lab. As the Empire probably smelled, she was Valkyria at a young age or something. So she's fully latched on to the prince and does whatever he wants, including the strange occurrence we're about to see. In the meantime, she recommends to our general that all prisoners be spared, and that the militia escort them out of the fort. The general, always happy to take orders from the enemy, agrees. What was that about? Silvaria was doing us a solid, mainly because she finally got to meet another Valkyria. She was talking about her life having meaning and such, but this mercy towards Alicia will turn out to rob Silvaria's final acts of meaning. In this literature analysis essay, I will etc. etc. Here's what happens. Silvaria frickin' explodes. Simple as that. It turns out, with turns out in all caps here, that Valkyria have this secret power where they can just blow up like a nuclear bomb by thinking about it. Maybe that's why not many people these days still have the Valkyria bloodline or what have you. The plan then was to have Gallia's army march into the fort behind us. We left with the prisoners, Silvaria blows up the armor units and spares us, and with that Gallia is once again screwed. But how will the Empire take advantage of our new weakness? With no delay whatsoever, we turn to deal with the next invasion, this time by a massive super duper ultra tank, the Marmota, a land dreadnought type thing that is driving right for the capital. What are we supposed to do about that? Well, the army might be dead, but the odd scraps and the royal guards and we militia peasants do manage to scrape together a plan. We'll force it to drive over a minefield and see what happens. Before we see how that works, there's a very brief side story about the Prime Minister planning to betray the Queen and become king himself. I don't remember that coming up, so I guess it doesn't go anywhere. We can even really break immersion by having Welkin show up for a medal ceremony right afterwards, in which we absolutely haul in medal after medal, and otherwise no one reacts to the general plot situation. Again, it would be very bold for you to not be able to do this for a plot reason. Very anti-player agency or something, but I'd be okay with that. We have to establish stakes mechanically somehow, and taking something away from the player is a way of doing that. Hashtag Isara 1935 never forget. Another side note, it was at this late stage in the game, we're basically at the end of the game now, that I finally got a successful attempt of that blasted Shock Trooper challenge. I did it. You get a powerful ZM Stormtrooper weapon, although I really don't know if it's useful at this stage. The main thing I wanted any Stormtrooper weapons for was just doing this challenge. Right, now let's somehow persuade the enemy dreadnought to drive over a minefield. For that, we need to go into a series of gorges and arrange the rocks such that the Marmota will probably take a certain route, leading us to the next mission, another gimmicky one. I already made a massive mistake right off the bat, and I think I suspected I had done so, because I randomly gave up most of my first turn to see what would happen, and what happens is everyone dies. Yes, for this one, the Marmota is literally right behind you as you advance, so if you leave units behind, they just die, and leaving units behind has been my style for the whole game. This time you need to deliberately not deploy as much infantry as you can spare. The issue being we need Rosie, Largo and Alicia for their command point boosts, so we end up with a load of stuff, and you're forced to bring both tanks. The stage will become a little more normal as a result of all this. We have to move each unit once or twice per turn, like it's a boring old garden variety turn-based tactics game. The goal will be to blow up some barrels and create landslides. The main obstacle is an area covered in mines you need to navigate, although it turns out to be possible to walk through it with a scout, unlike the previous minefield. I don't think this is the minefield from the plot, by the way, the plot to kill the Marmota. I think there just also happens to be an enemy minefield on this route. Good thing these mines can't be buried or otherwise made invisible. We'd be in real trouble then, wouldn't we? I failed again though due to not moving Welkin enough, and this whole thing was getting pretty annoying. So while I struggle along with this, let me discuss something totally unrelated that I may or may not have forgotten about in my notes from earlier. Topic: friendships and racism. This game quote-unquote has a mechanic that encourages you to build a squad where the members are friends. This isn't like Fire Emblem or something, they don't become friends, it's only that certain people like certain other people, and if you have them near each other in battle, a certain thing happens. I'm racking my brain so hard to try and remember what it actually does. I really don't know, it might be nothing. I want to say it makes potentials more likely to trigger. So it's just another vague part of the vague gameplay machine that is potentials. It does sometimes give you unique dialogue. I originally tried to make my squad lineup contain a lot of friends. Yet as you might have noticed, the way I'm playing the game doesn't really involve the majority of the squad, so friendship bonuses simply aren't coming up. You have to play a lot worse to get them to come up, so overall it's not a very well integrated idea. And that is the first point I wanted to make. It needs to be a bigger deal, same as the related potential system overall. And while I'm ranting, the friendships thing is muddied in the early game because some of the squad members your people are friends with notably aren't in the squad, so like why does it tell you about them? It's because the list gradually expands over the course of the game to give you new options. Your reserve pool grows, and I believe it's random who you get in each chapter. So it might actually not be possible to use the friendship system in certain situations with certain RNG roles. One interesting related point is that actually because of potentials, racism plays into the mechanics somewhat, yes indeed. Some of your squad are Darksons, and some of the others get debuffed if they go near them because they have the Darkson hater potential. Yes, mechanical racism, absolutely phenomenal. The game actually encourages you to segregate your squad by race to avoid debuffs, and the Darksons sometimes get a buff for being together as well. It's just interesting because you expect the game to be about overcoming these barriers through camaraderie, and the plot begins to go there, but you can't get rid of these debuffing potentials. So we end up being able to say, all engineers are equal, except the Darkson ones who cause trouble, so just don't bring them. One imagines a game where the potentials can change over time, and who the squad members like can change over time, Fire Emblem invoked, XCOM invoked even, but because it's all static and all poorly communicated, and because it has so little bearing on what you'll do in the game, that having it all there is just a red herring anyway. Perhaps as a wee gesture, we could have the squad stop having Darkson hater traits after Isara dies, so you feel like maybe the whole thing gave us some perspective, something to think about. How about that? Not that this even came up for me, because the 4 squad members I ever used in this campaign don't have that trait. Notably, Rosie doesn't have the Darkson hater trait, as I recall, despite that being a massive plot point. Oh, it's all a ludo-narrative dissonance. Ultimately, the friendship and potential system is too distant from how the game really goes. Although it probably wouldn't be if you weren't being so encouraged to speedrun every stage, then you could use more of the squad and think about these things a little more. And I'll come back to that idea in a bit. The Marmota has been directed into our sensationally pitiful ambush, receiving many hits from mines and tank cannons, achieving nothing. Makes me think the Empire probably should have brought this out to kick the invasion off, back when they also had the regular army. I'm sure altogether they would have got the job done. Well, they somehow managed to not win the battles where they had an invincible Valkyria on their side, so let's see how they're gonna somehow lose from here as well. Alicia somehow worked out how to do this nuke thing from earlier. She worked out it was caused by Silvaria killing herself, and now she has some idea of how to do it. Something was definitely skipped over here, including scenes to motivate her to try and do this. It's totally not too late to try other things right now. We don't have to go to extreme measures. Also, if her plan here is to go out and explode the Marmota, this will also kill Squad 7 and the remains of the Gallian army. We're all right in the kill zone together here. Would Alicia really be willing to throw everything away suddenly, just to give her life meaning, or whatever she's suddenly babbling about? Silvaria's abused child PTSD appears to have contagiously affected Alicia, and maybe we can do some lore foo to say Valkyria can mind meld or something to explain this. This plot point should be Silvaria turning on Maxi in revenge for him ordering her to kill herself. Rewrite, 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 all the fanfiction is here. The actual reason is, of course, to give our not very heroic hero Welkin a chance to step in and save Alicia from herself. He doesn't console her very much, saying that real victory, quote-unquote, is only won if we win without using Valkyria powers, and I'm not really sure why that is. Alicia's feeling down about not being human, but Welkin says, "You might be a glorious Ubermensch, but you're still good old Alicia to me." Then he drops an L-bomb on her, and then also pulls out a sudden battlefield proposal to seal the deal. Absolute cinema of a sort. Has your girlfriend been losing grip on her humanity? Is she about to kill herself, kill you, kill everyone you know, in a mad final burst of violence, in order to give her remaining life some semblance of meaning? She's probably setting you up to propose to her, you know? Take the hint, Welkies. It works perfectly. The nuclear fire returns to the livestream, and the situation is very much diffused. We're still standing out in the open right next to a massive enemy battleship, but so far that's not causing any issues. I think it supposedly drove off without attacking us, as it cuts to another scene where the whole gang is standing out here now. Ellet says she won't even make a big deal about our proposal. A promise she breaks because we know she goes on about it in her book, because remember the game is our ethereal player character imagining these scenes based on reading the book. And then green sparkles fell from the sky and everyone laughed, the book claims, and there you have it. Varrot asks Welkin for further orders, forgetting she is his superior. Was Welkin supposed to be promoted after all in a scene that didn't make the cut? Or was Isara alive in this scene in the original draft, and they replaced her with Varrot late without changing the line? Or is it all more of Ellet's lies? Whatever the case, Welkin orders us to attack the Marmota, despite how badly that's going so far, and we have to race after it because it already drove off to Randgrids. There is a brief scene where Faldio is lamenting how Welkin could think so differently from him. Why didn't he like it when I shot his girlfriend and turned her into a nuclear bomb? He puzzles in his cell. There's a lot of stuff they don't teach you when you do an archaeology degree, as it turns out. Well, the new problem is to get to the capital from the Plains of Proposal. We're going to have to go across the Vassal Bridge from earlier in the game, but it's somehow still occupied by the Empire, despite their many withdrawals and defeats. In fact, it's none other than the side villain occasionally mentioned, General Jaeger. This guy is from some other territory captured by the Empire, which the Prince promises to make independent if this guy in particular does a good job. A hint at a wider storyline going on, although it remains only a hint. Basically, we got to kill a load of stuff on the Vassal East Bank map once again. He offhandedly mentioned that he is invincible in the beginning, and I thought, that's trash talk, and I'll just launch my ICBM to go and stick a ZM-Car HG right up his behind. Turns out, he doesn't have a behind. Oh dear. Tried to literally tear him a new one using a grenade, and that didn't work either. It seems we're about to face another invincible enemy, but it's not quite that bad. What's happening is the tank is plastered with a second layer of armor that you need to kill to expose the real tank, which I totally didn't realize for a long time in this stage. That extra armor can be damaged with AT shots, only it has a lot of health, and the health regenerates every turn. However, you can stop this regeneration if you capture enemy bases, to deny him spare parts or some such plot reason for this. Therefore, the challenge is actually seeing if you can get enough AT damage to one turn kill the armor layer, and you take bases to make that easier. Not losing the Edelweiss would also help. And yes, there's plenty of AT stuff in the middle of the map, so you need to clear some stuff with your infantry first, ideally. These added constraints basically turn this mission into another glimpse of real, pure, core Valkyria Chronicles gameplay, where you're thinking about something other than skipping everything. You need to take all the bases, you need to have loads of AT damage sources out and about, you need to be safe from the massive tank and more besides as you move around. It's like a real squad tactics shooter, and in many ways, this is the best mission in the game. It's a real culmination of the gameplay, of where the gameplay wasn't going the whole game, where it could have been going though. I remember staring at the map and visualizing what I'm going to do, actually planning things and thinking about where I want the troops to be by the end of the turn, where the Edelweiss, Largo and Dallas need to be to begin bringing our AT potential up. It's a real game, this mission. You can experiment and think about things and find uses for all the classes. This is it, this is the game. Deleting the rank equals speed thing. Like, this is what you would get in all of the missions if they could only do that. It's quite beautiful. I tried a lot of different things. In total, I have just under 2 hours of footage in this one mission, shot over 3 days of experiments. We're so deep in this video I can't really talk about it, so let me show you some stuff, and we'll mostly speed on towards whatever the winning strategy ended up being here. First, here's a key thing. I talked earlier about using support fire to get extra attacks for free. Making a 2-scout rush allows you to get 2 ZMK mag bursts per command point, aka you can kill a heavy tank with 1 command point, aka this is overpowered. Although actually, this late in the game, you can have weapons like the ZMK 6 and 7, which are similar, so it's not even that cheesy anymore. So yes, my opening moves involved getting a good 1 mag kill on a troop defending the rear of a tank, and then de facto 1 mag killing the tank, stopping it, pulling out and piling on the Edelweiss at the end of the first turn and freeing up the road in front of it for infantry to run past safely. While I try out some other stuff, I should probably touch on a point I skipped over ages ago that has returned to relevance now. Topic: invincible enemies. One thing I've seen people criticize about this game is things like this tank battle here, and more accurately things like Silvaria or indeed the Marmota, throwing invincible enemies into a game that has permadeath and is supposedly a little more grounded with its stakes and rules. Personally, I don't feel it's a problem. However, the people who complain about this are correct. I only don't care because I'm playing in such a meta-seeking, disconnected way that I immediately clock invincible enemies as a game design tool. I'm not in the world mentally or seeking a fair or consistent challenge, so I'm like, well, yep, an obstacle that no amount of skill can overcome. It's just a gameplay conceit to get you to do something illogical for the game's purposes, like try to open the radiators on that big tank, or have an AT damage DPS check. Well, it's a very unimmersive thing, and I guess that's bad. Having the game effectively break the fourth wall by changing the rules whenever it feels like it, it's still achieving its goal. It's a change of pace. You think about things differently because of it. The argument that it's too bullshit to tolerate doesn't land for me, but I think that's only because I skipped the Silvaria fights using foreknowledge and exploits, and here with the Jaeger fight, this stage is the real final mission of the game, or the final mission using all of the game's features and mechanics. So I think it's fine for it to be weirdly hard, although you can argue it's hard in a way that isn't prepared for in earlier missions, and invents new gameplay rules, so it's not properly integrated, if we go by the bosses should be a test of what the game tries to teach you mechanically vague design principle. This is a very half-hearted topic from me, where I guess my big point is just that I don't mind it. Even though I wouldn't do this if I were making the game, and people who complain about it have a real point. For a new player, I will concede that the Silvaria fights, and probably this Jaeger one, are too bullshit. I want the game to be more serious, have more consistency, be less gimmicky, and generate difficulty by scaling prior challenges, not just introducing cheating enemies to fight. I know what I mean by this, and later I'm going to show you, but I do so with hesitation because when I show you what this approach to difficulty actually looks like in Valkyria Chronicles, it will also prove that I am wrong. What do I mean by that? Let's ignore Devin for now, I'll be back for this later. Alright, for once, we're going to do a real play-by-play. Here's how we're going to do this mission. First, Alicia hits the first base, using a tank trap as cover to get close enough to one-mag the guy sitting in there. She moves up to be ready for Ica to storm in, with just enough movement to get into position for a support fire double attack into the heavy tank. Goodbye. Alicia finishes the nearby shock trooper, meaning that the road is now interception free for engineers and deploying troops from this base to go out there later. Then Alicia uses her movement for the turn to bypass the occupied building and hide in the alley behind it, ready for a run to the northwest base across the street. I moved Ica up to kill the sniper on the roof and failed because in a past life I invented shrinkflation. I can recover by leaving Ica right here, so she will intercept this sniper who has to move to get an angle on the street outside. We'll order 2 scouts to spawn at the base we took, ready for antics next turn. Next, a surprisingly useful move is available with Rosie. If you deploy her as far forward as possible, she can do a 2-move run to a piece of cover in this unimportant back alley at the bottom of the map. You do need to work the bottom.wav because the enemy can run left to right along the streets and capture your main base while you're distracted, and I had noticed they tended to move a tank to within spitting distance of the end of this alleyway in their first turn. So we're going to think about doing something with that. Next, Marina out in the streets has an angle on a Lancer overlooking where we'll need to take the Edelweiss, so let's kill him right now. He can probably also one-shot Ica, who's in the building with him, so that could pay off right away. Speaking of Ica, for my final move, I came back to her because I wanted to try a trick shot to recover from our bad RNG earlier, and I do get it. We can shoot the sniper and the anti-tank gun behind them with the same mag and kill both. So now this building is totally clear as the first turn comes to an end, looking good. Ica joins Alicia at the start line for the next attack westward, and will hand it over to the enemy. What do they got? They spend 5 points, ordering 3 troops and getting all units an attack buff. After some shuffling around, their ace, Ty the Immortal, comes into that alleyway with Rosie and uses a flamethrower. Flamethrowers ignore cover, so it's pretty damaging. Not deadly though, this guy will run for your base if you don't kill him. But I think he scripted to go into this alleyway first, and my big plan was that Rosie will kill him. That failed because our interception wasn't enough, and obviously we missed the counterattack. Aces have massive evasion stats, so we're in trouble here. Unless the ace can't see Rosie. And funnily enough, the enemy super tank, after dusting Alicia a bit with a mortar shot, fires this massively long-range smoke mortar thing that lands on Rosie. I believe the super tank will smoke select places on the map at random, usually going for their own bases so you can't shoot into them. So this is a bit of luck, as it will turn out. Now we can move Rosie in front of Ty the Immortal without dying and shoot him without him evading. We take an AT shot on the Edelweiss, but that's fine for now, and an enemy stormtrooper is approaching our base, shooting to damage Largo, but not enough for it to matter too much. Now it's our turn. First, a rare defensive move. I'm going to bring the Shamrock up to kill that forward trooper, and then sit at the road junction to provide interception fire, / be a distraction in general. Don't ask why Zaka doesn't mind killing people if he's such an extreme pacifist, by the way. It's more of a don't kill for revenge thing, not a don't kill just because you're following orders type thing. As Zaka actually says in the game, I believe, it's best not to think about it.
Can you even fight?
Don't sweat the details, right?
Now Dallas repairs the Edelweiss, then runs a ways down the street, a dangerous spot but will need her further forward later once the Edelweiss advances. We do just that, then launch some good old Isara smoke right at the enemy tank. We want to deny any interception fire for the upcoming scout moves, and the tank does have 360-degree vision and a powerful machine gun. This also forces the tank to move during its turn, although I believe it's scripted to move to various places back and forth, so that's not really important. Speaking of smoke, Rosie looks around and can't see Ty the Immortal at all. Didn't we already kill a guy called Ty the Immortal in an earlier stage, by the way? Best not to think about it. Let's shoot into the smoke. And indeed, he's still right there, and one volley from the weapon dropped from that shock trooper challenge is enough to shave off hundreds of health, even without using a grenade first to make him stand up, which might be the more normal approach. We could also use a flamethrower ourselves. Rosie has one. I think it's undodgeable, as well as ignoring cover, and it's got a huge AoE, so good for shooting when you can't see the enemy in front of you, which is an extremely rare circumstance, yet there you go, it did happen. Now, scout rushing time at last. Montley is up first. We cross the street without getting gunned down thanks to our smokescreen, and after some adjustments I can take out the trooper in the base. There is a scout in cover at the back, and for him, we're just going to circle around and sit next to him, making him face the wrong direction. Frisia comes in for the back attack and takes him out. Then, a mistake. I left Frisia to defend against incoming troops from the south, and used Montley to kill the AT gun and capture this base. But firing triggers support fire that makes Frisia turn around, denying interception coverage on the road. We take the base, but now I have to think about possibly placing Montley where Frisia is to stop enemies running in. I was thinking about this because I've been here before, and they do tend to run in from the south. But I stuck with my original plan, which was to have Montley placed in the top corner to intercept against reinforcements coming from the northwest base, and to be right in front of the super tank, so if the tank wants to kill someone, it can be him. Sorry, Montley. With our final point, I begin going after the northwest base, but we'll need a couple of points to spare to really get in there. So for now, I just kill one of the guards, then leave most of my movement unused to go hide in an alley, wanting to avoid the Lancer in that base and the heavy tank on the street to the west. Enemy turn. Reinforcement summoned, buffing attack again. Jaeger uses the super tank to hit the Edelweiss, but that's fine, we're prepared to repair it. Then he smokes the northwest base. Again, this is kinda cool because Alicia's in there. We can attack really safely, even with 2 tanks parked right next to it. This smoke RNG is on our side. Here's the attack I was expecting from the south base towards the center. Frisia takes a flamethrower hit, survives, then blasts the trooper away. Not too bad, but at low health, an enemy scout is able to shoot basically from the other base and chip away at her last HP, taking her out. The last enemy move is then to take a newly deployed sniper out of the northwestern base, but he walks right past Alicia's alleyway and gets obliterated. Very nice. The answer to my Montley question then was that I should have gone and faced south with Frisia after all. That would have saved Frisia, and we'd have 1 extra scout and 1 extra ZMK-8 on the front line. By the way, you might notice something. I'm not using orders. I'm using all my points to make movements and do tactics and have thoughts. This is the game, the secret game, the hidden Valkyria Chronicles, where you aren't bulletproof and the enemy isn't invincible, except when they are. And there's line of sight considerations and cover and anticipating enemy movements, and it's like a tactics game and stuff. We're in a different world right now. This is actually rare. Let's do turn 3 then. I actually save scummed and did turn 3 twice. I'm going to pretend I didn't, and here's the play. Edelweiss goes up to the junction, from where you can fire a mortar shot into the southern base, exploiting that several enemies are there to make it really soften it up in one blow with that area of effect. I got mad at the result, I save scummed again, took the shot again, got a better result, and there we have it. The exact details of where you place mortar shots makes a big difference. And there's very little indication of what you're going to get by firing at a given pixel. Wow, tactics game, wow, and so on. Why am I not an all-knowing god? Well, at least I can time travel. A snipe from across the map kills the barely alive trooper facing the road, freeing us up to make this move. Ica abandons Alicia and crosses the map to medevac Frisia and take another shot on the southern base. We blast the scout elite away, then move up Montley to kill the trooper in cover, again relying on the ZMK-8G's overpoweredness to avoid having to grenade that guy to make him stand up. We grab the flag, then put Montley behind the heavy tank blocking the nearby street. Then Rosie can emerge from her fateful alleyway and run behind the tank to grab a support fire attack on the tank's radiator. Her weapon only does like 1/3 of the damage we need, but that extra free mag of ZMK-8G means the heavy tank is down. You don't need to do this, by the way. I'm clearly just having fun wiping out the entire map for this one. Next, we'll have to throw Alicia into the smoke of that northwest base, where she feels around for our foe's big lance, blah blah blah. We managed to take out the Lancer in there just fine. We can grab the flag, which means the enemy super tank is no longer going to regenerate. We can even sneak over to the west edge and stand behind this other tank. We've got 2 points left, and you might know what that means already. 2 mags of ZMK-8 later, the tank is gone. Now it really is just the boss left. We've got the map totally clear for the close of turn 3. I love it when a plan comes together, except for Frisia dying, of course. We'll blame Montley for that. we might as well leave the play-by-play here, but I hope you saw the point I wanted to make with this commentary sequence. There's a game in this game. That was it. We could have had strategies and overlapping ideas and tactics and stuff the whole time. I really think requiring you to take every flag and possibly to kill every enemy might be a simple path towards a whole new Valkyria Chronicles, the switch from puzzle game to tactics game. With only a few lines of code, it's all right there, and it's good, I claim. To finish this mission, we need to shoot the tank 1 billion times, and for that we bring up poor old Dallas to get hit some more and restock ammo on a nearby Lancer. Then we spend whole turns of command points firing away. For the most part, Jaeger doesn't fight back. He still wastes command points casting orders, even after everyone's dead, and he seems to drive up and down between preset points. After finding out that 6 turns will only get you a B, I replayed the post-killing everyone part of the stage to try and get this going faster. I was able to do this because I left a save at the end of turn 3 for just such scumming purposes. I was just about able to get the tank killed at the end of turn 5, with fewer points wasted on orders and having 2 Lancers firing instead of 1, making points spent on restocking ammo more efficient because you can do them both at once. With that, Vassal is retaken once again and we can carry on. Jaeger himself is impressed with the Gallian militia, fighting for their home in a similar way to how he's theoretically fighting for his home, and then he walks off into the smoke, never to be seen again. They had some ideas about a storyline involving this character, only he was in the game so little, I guess it just didn't happen. With the skull on one shoulder and the gold braid on the other, it makes him look a bit like a US Civil War Confederate officer, you could say, anime style at least. We're probably stumbling upon some kind of Japanese trope character here, I don't know, but the actual point I wanted to make is they didn't put enough into this guy's deal to even justify having any deal in the first place. So let Isara live and leave this guy out. There's no space in this plot for a quaternary villain. We didn't even have time to put story in for Silvaria, the secondary villain, so we can't have other characters. While I was ranting, the Marmota drove into Rangreet's castle, the Queen's house. This is less of a rude entrance than you think, because we cut to Maxi bowing to the throne and partaking in a formal audience, very civilized. The Prime Minister immediately surrenders and offers vassalage to avoid conquest. This guy's got better ideas than the average Total War diplomat AI. However, like in Total War, the Conqueror doesn't want a vassal. He wants to make everything his personal property. I say he. Maxi actually has this we-us pronouns thing going on because he's being ultra-formal. I don't know if other countries do this, but saying we instead of I is a thing in UK high society and academia. Anyway, Maxi also wants to marry the Queen to seal the deal, but the Queen has a secret. She pulls off her fennec fox ears hat and reveals that she has rather dark hair. Uh-oh. Everyone thought, it is mentioned somewhere, that she was a Valkyria, she was of that line, and that's why she was the queen. But she was a Darkson, that's the twist. The racism plotline is back in action, baby. Cordelia says she knows about the whole Darkson calamity being fake, which is a whole bag of worms to get into, because it's like, well, why didn't you help the Darkson if you are one, and you're certain the Valkyria were wrong and the legends were wrong? Let's just leave it, it's too late for that. Some of the Darkson were made into nobility in exchange for siding with the Valkyria back during the war, and that's how a Darkson family ended up being House Rangreets of Gallia, ultimately becoming independent monarchs. Still, it doesn't really stop Maxi's plan going on, so it's not the biggest twist. To try and twist things up more, Cordelia tries to kill Maxi. This fails, and really it seems Maxi will get his way, but there's one aspect of this way we're missing, the Valkov. This word was dropped a few times in recent scenes, and we see it again here in a Faldio scene. The main character is back. He hears about a tank driving into the castle, and figures the Empire must know about the Valkov, whatever that is. Faldio realizes only he can save the day, and so to escape prison, he pulls out absolute grade A, foolproof, never-tried-before schemes. He goes, "Oh gods, I think I have tapeworms, please come in here," so that the guard opens the door, and then he straight up just kills them and escapes. More heroics, and we'll learn what that was about shortly. Firstly, Irene Ellert is talking about how she is going to get married, trying to steal Welkin and Alicia's thunder, no doubt. She tells the people of the capital over the radio that Squad 7 is still alive, probably the only military formation still alive, and they will come to the capital as soon as possible to deal with the latest invasion. Various NPCs wish them luck with that, and thus suitably armed with hopes and prayers, will defeat the undefeatable superweapon and save the Queen, while still finding time to plan a wedding, of course. There's just one problem: the Valkov. This turns out to be the name of a gigantic Valkyria lance, basically a huge death laser, that was hidden inside the castle's main tower. So what actually happened there was the tank drove in, they somehow wired the bottom of the lance into the tank, then they can drive straight back out with this new massive magical turret. And they waste no time in driving straight for Squad 7 outside of town, so yes, a final battle is upon us. The giant death laser shoots and blows up a whole load of stuff. Now we see why the battlefields of the Darkson Calamity had big trenches cut into them. It's the same old trouble with these Valkyria, although you don't actually need to be a Valkyria to wield this thing apparently, although that would explain why a Darkson family had it stashed away for a rainy day. 2 other squads get squashed immediately, and we are again only saved by the fact that there was someone else to die in our place when the unavoidable death machine rolled up. Ah, a genius metaphor for the social politics of warfare or something. Well, it's probably just Squad 7 now, and we somehow approach the Marmota unscratched for our final battle. Also, a pointless sideshow occurs because the Queen jumped out a window or something and joins our squad. Although you don't get her as a playable character or anything special, a real missed opportunity for some gameplay there. Again, you don't even mention it happening if you're not going to do something with it. It feels like this should be a Darkson can be Valkyria 2 moment where the Queen busts out her own superpowers, and that's what lets you challenge the Marmota. Instead, we're going to attack this corner where Alicia's antics back there before the nuke scare caused a particular bit of damage such that there is a broken gangway, allowing one to climb from ground level towards the engines with Ragnite radiators to shoot out. Yes, as always, there was a big glowing weakness, so we're still in business. The problem is the Marmota comes packed with interception-fired turrets that overlook the spawn zone, so most moves you can make involve getting shot heavily right away. You could carefully destroy the turrets while fighting off infantry to secure the area, or you could fire an ICBM. Alicia makes her run, and after being distracted by some ladders you can use to stand near the turrets, I guess to get a 100% chance to hit lancer shots on them or something, you can also proceed with the stage. You can go up to a high point, killing some goons on the way, and from this vantage you can shoot into the radiators on these propellers. Propellers? What good does that do, you ask? A good question, and the answer is that it turns out, for some reason, taking out the propellers also takes out the shield generator protecting the Valkov. How could those things even possibly be connected, being from different technological paradigms, millennia apart? I don't know, heat build-up or something. Those weren't propellers, they were big fans facing the wrong way, but fans nonetheless. We wave our hands so hard that we ourselves are now being fanned, and move on with the knowledge that we can shoot the Valkov to stop the Marmota using it again, and that will at least simplify matters. Then I get game overed because I ignored all of the infantry around the place, and one of the Lancers walks behind the Edelweiss and kills it, that old chestnut. Well, at least we now know what to do, so it's time for a more focused first turn, with my first move being to point the Edelweiss at the infantry and shoot into them, making it hard for them to sneak around me. I used smoke instead of an ICBM because the Valkov is a tank-type enemy, meaning you have to bring Lancers up onto the gangways below it to do the next stage of the plan, unfortunately. You can also try driving tanks out west and using the terrain to point the gun upwards. The game was talking about something like that, but this is going to be way cheaper. Soon I have Alicia, Frisia and Largo up here, but I learned the hard way you have to shoot a certain part of the Valkov, just the tip, .mp3, to do any damage. I also learned that said tip can actually shoot back, raining lasers down on the walkways and killing Alicia. At least up here, she can't really get caught on the ground for permadeath, so it's a pretty safe place to die. We have a good example of something I mentioned earlier, where the enemy move all their troops up but stop them just outside of the Edelweiss's intercept range. The AI can smell those ranges and won't enter, which works for us. They're not using their turn to its fullest, for sure. Finally, we get to the main business. Largo has the point we can shoot inside and we'll start launching. It takes 15 hits to do it, so that's at least 2 turns of plugging away. After doing this essentially in the previous mission as well, this is getting a bit annoying. The big challenge keeps being, shoot something with a Lancer 1 trillion times. It feels like you should have a Lancer boss, a sniper boss, a scout boss, like gimmick that only certain classes can do, like the concept of the class challenge stages, only turned into boss battles. We'll need infinite ammo up top, so after the squad spends some time hanging out under fire, I get more smoke out and send Dallas up to make the climb. She does the job, and then with Largo I tried the damage boost order, the cheaper version of demolition boost. It only reduces the shots to kill by 1, and you only get it for 1 turn. So it's worse than spending 2 CP to shoot 2 extra times, most likely. Number 1, I wanted to do more, and number 2, I wish it would just say what it does. Exactly. Like, seriously, it feels so horrible to just waste points like this. Especially when you know how long it takes to reload a save in this game. So we're getting to work. Back on the ground, the Empire is actually trying hard to kill Marina for some reason, which wouldn't really help them if they did that. It should be noted the AI doesn't play the objectives like you do, so they're not going to try and stop you from doing the main thing as long as you have them distracted. And the sandbags are stopping them from doing even this, plus the Edelweiss's interception fire stops them from moving most of the time. Just a deadlock forms, which is fine, we're just buying turns to complete the stage. I tried Demolition Boost as well, a 3-point commitment, and the shots to kill were still at 10. Really, this needed to be halving the shots to kill count at least to be worth it, shouldn't have bothered. I even triggered this double damage potential on Largo, but the count only went from 10 to 9 after, so I don't know. Maybe the Valkov isn't really a tank, so the orders and potentials relating to anti-tank attacks don't actually apply. I'm certain I'm being screwed by the obtuseness of the game here. Towards the end of the 5th turn, we're finally done shooting. Definitely could have gone faster because we wasted a load of turns on the orders and shooting at the infantry for peace of mind. You don't need to keep your ground squad alive, so you should just let the infantry and the gun turrets gradually whittle you down. Not that it matters, because 5 turns is enough for the A rank, they're pretty generous here. Just don't get tricked into fighting the tank's turrets, that must be the real key. The Valkov is dead, but the original problem, the super tank, remains. What will we do about it? Well, we'll skip a middle stage, and we just then somehow end up on the roof, where Maximilian dramatically comes up a lift, looking absolutely swole, and wielding knockoff Valkyria gear. We'll talk about this in a second. First, Maxi gives his tragic backstory monologue. Yes, it turns out he's being so bastardy to us because his mother was someone lowly. He's a prince, but a low-status one. And the other princes killed his part of the family in a train bomb, leaving him as the lone survivor. For revenge, he wants to kill his father and take over the Empire. Gallia's only really involved because he wanted to come steal the Valkov. I don't know, you should have offered to rent it for a bit, you didn't need to invade. Well, now no one has it. Gallia got devastated, Maxi's plan is probably screwed, and the Empire lost its invasion force, and Isara is dead. It's a good old everyone loses conclusion. War, what is it good for? Turn-based squad shooters, that's what. Now Maxi starts glowing blue. It's time for another invincible enemy battle, and invincible final boss battle. The deal here is the simulated Valkyria abilities he has need these coils to power them, and you can take out the coils currently in use to bring down his shields for the rest of the turn. I didn't remember that was the goal. I thought you had to kill all the coils, so I didn't really focus on the correct ones. Also, the towers the coils are on provide interception fire. And of course, Maxi has an infinite range omnidirectional intercept going on, Valkyria style. You can counter both of these by using tanks to take out towers. And you might ask, why are the tanks on the roof of the enemy tank? Did we miss the cutscene with a massive industrial crane gradually arranging this while the enemy tank sat perfectly still? Yes, we did. I accidentally skipped it, I guess. Here's the real solution. Isara smoke. Just shoot that at Maxi on the very first turn. Now you're free from interception the whole turn and can get to work. While we do that, topic: the real ending of Valkyria Chronicles. The game is about to end, but I can't let it go without telling you my thoughts on the implications of the final mission for the world and the lore. I'm inspired to create a sort of happy ending to my subversive everyone is the villain rewrite, where Faldio is the main character, and it all starts with the work of our friend Maximilian here. He has invented a way to give himself Valkyria powers using a machine. I'm interested by this because, if you don't know, I have, for no reason, a master's degree in physics, and this development means that the Valkyria powers aren't magic, they're physics. They're caused by some known mechanism, a mechanism you can build outside of Valkyria's bodies. In many ways, what Maxi has done would be the foundation of a second industrial revolution. This is the in-universe equivalent of discovering quantum physics, which is basically what allowed electronics and computers to be invented in real life. A machine that can output ludicrous levels of power, perhaps extending the lifetime of that limited supply of Ragnite fuel we're fighting over. At least we were fighting over it before it turned out to be one of those daddy doesn't love me type wars instead, which maybe is all of them, my nerd parallel in the sociology department will argue. Anyway, so Subversion 1 is that Maxi is an absolute hero now. He would go on to be venerated as the greatest intellectual of all time from this point. We needed to recognize how applicable to potentially anything his inventions might be. Is killing him actually the bad ending? Well, here's where we slide towards my somewhat good ending by remembering that while this technology has infinite potential, the main thing it does is turn human beings into invincible nuclear bombs. It was designed entirely so that one person could destroy massive amounts of stuff. This is now a nuclear bombs versus nuclear reactors analogy. You can use it for industrial applications that bypass resource shortages and extend civilization itself, or you can straight up destroy the entire world in 5 minutes, if you like. And enough people do like that this is a dangerous option that will become a problem quite quickly. My cynic's plotline then becomes that the invention of artificial Valkyria soldier kits, quickly miniaturized and deployed in battle, massively increases the use of Ragnite fuel and massively decreases the ability to get it as the Empire starts enacting Darks and Calamity Part 2 across Europe. The land is again scarred and burned by the power of the Valkyria, only this time it's men doing it too. Hashtag gender equality. Hashtag destroy the Untermensch. Shout out to the YouTube algorithm trying to work out what this video is about, by the way. And my happy ending to all of this, yes, we'll pull a happy ending from the nuclear war genocide ending, is that the Ragnite really did run out, and that's it. There was a second calamity, but now there can't be a third. It's over. The Empire burns out that final supply of Ragnite, the last parts are hidden away or destroyed by the Federation, so the Empire can't power their calamity machines anymore. And we take some kind of primitivist ending, where civilization would collapse, industrialization is over, we lost the ability though, to destroy ourselves, and I guess lost the ability to become dependent on something that will run out, so we don't have to deal with that economic quandary anymore. The medieval world of Europe I invoked before can return. We've already got the castles and the royal families. And yes, the happy ending is that the Valkyria Chronicles, the stories of Ragnite powers letting people conquer everything, are over. For now. I don't know, we have to assume there's no rest of the world to bring into the mix in this storyline, and while the game never mentions any other places, the world can't all be ocean outside of Europe, right? I haven't looked at a map since 465 BCE, so I'm not sure. So there's one ending idea. Here's another one I liked. What if we took that little stub about Alicia being unhappy about being a Valkyria, and we use that now with Maxi? Perhaps Maxi's machine doesn't really work, unless he can absorb someone's Valkyria powers. So Alicia and Welkin agree to let her powers be taken to free her from this burden, and prove they can win without them, whatever the game wanted to do with like Welkin and that idea. And then defeating Maxi also serves the purpose of saving Alicia from whatever the world might do to her. Or, my other take, was perhaps that when Valkyria die, their spirits get trapped in other people's bodies, here we go. So killing Maxi transfers his malice into Alicia, and then Alicia is all but forced to go nuclear because of this influx of hateful energy or something. And only her true love for Welkin diffuses it, basically transplanting that scene from earlier, and having it happen as the final twist instead. And then the Queen reveals that the Valkov was created by absorbing Valkyria powers into a rock, and she knows the ultra-secret technique to do this to Alicia too, creating a necklace or something that contains both her and the chaotic artificial energy of Maxi, and this rock then shattering in a post-credit scene will be the beginning of the sequel, blah blah blah, so on so on. We'll keep the studio happy, we can milk this forever. How about that? The actual point to close this off is only to say that Maxi's weapon, his boss gimmick, is a massive deal in the lore of the world. It shouldn't be dismissed. If you want a rewrite to redeem Isara, she can be the only one that notices this, and she makes the squad save Maxi, then converts the tech to be used to absorb Ragnite energy from the sun to power machines, creating a solar punk type utopian ending with Isara as the hero. There you go, actual happy ending where everyone didn't die. Let's move on and see the real happy ending, shall we? We're blasting away at Maxi, the shield is gone, he's losing health, we're completing the game. He's like, no, how could this be? And Welkin's like, you lost the moment you relied on the Valkyria's power, forgetting we'd be dead without the Valkyria's power at that massive battle with Sylvaria. Overall, he's missing what exactly the problem is here, I'd say. Here's the issue. It looks like Maxi can still power up enough to go nuclear and take us with him. We forgot how to shoot him, so we can't kill him. But wait a minute, isn't this ending missing something? Isn't it missing a hero? Yes, Faldio, the man, the myth, the legend, appears out of nowhere from inside the tank and declares he has unplugged the apocalypse machine, thus preventing the apocalypse. It was that easy. Then, for extremely vague reasons, Faldio grabs the Emperor and drags him to the edge of the tank's built-in bottomless pit. He declares he's seeking forgiveness for what he did to Alicia, even though he was right, and Alicia would be dead if he didn't do it. So technically, he saved her life. Yes, yes, yes. He also just wants to kill the Emperor, even though we could shoot him if we wanted. The machine's off, right? He's just a guy now. For some reason, it's Faldio's moment. He and Maxi fall into the pit, and Maxi, I guess, explodes down there a little bit, leaving the tank aflame. So it is possible to get smaller explosions, creating a lot of heat out of this tech, huh? You could make a reactor out of that. Nay, it's time for us to have a perilous escape from the burning tank. The particulars of the fire mean that everyone except Welkin and Alicia can escape, leaving the pair trapped. As usual, they're both not especially fazed by this turn of events, and calmly decide to check if there's somewhere else to stand other than in the fire. Another moment of possible ludo-narrative resonance, where the characters are aware that they're extremely hard to kill, so they don't really care about this situation. They're both carrying Ragnade with unlimited uses. Maybe they can just tank the fire until it goes out. Actually, there's a dumber escape method available. Remember about 1 trillion years ago, when there was a random scene inserted into unrelated scenes that mentioned how Isara may or may not have invented airplanes? Well, it's none other than the guy whose name I forget, the guy who sells you guns and probably skims half the money off the top for himself. He's got the plane, and he can save us. How could you possibly land a plane on a burning gigatank? Who said anything about landing? Welkin and Alicia calmly agree that jumping onto the plane as it passes should be fine. And with that characteristic unlimited confidence, they just do it. The Marmota explodes a bunch, while Alicia and Welkin cling to the wings of the plane. I mentioned physics earlier. Did you know that instantly accelerating your body to the speed of a passing plane would put a certain amount of stress on your physical being? I'm trying to work out in my mind if jumping onto a moving plane imparts less impulse on your body than straight up being hit by the plane head on and getting stuck to the front. Well, I didn't much like this. I mentioned before, I want planes cut out of the story for some reason. This is my big thing. It's another element that implies too much missing story, and more importantly, missing game mechanics. My alternate take here would be for Alicia's powers to absorb the flames with the power of love, similar to that thing from earlier. Or literally it shows them just using Ragnade over and over, and their burns disappearing. Go full ludo-narrative resonance. The game shows you a list of all the squad members, and reminds you whether or not you got them killed. We didn't get anyone killed, thanks to Game Over scumming at least. And most of these names are totally unrecognizable because the majority of Squad 7 sat in their headquarters doing nothing for the whole war. It's a pretty cushy assignment if you're not a scout with slightly higher HP than the other scouts, basically, or Engineer Dallas doing all of the war's logistics by hand and still getting shot at, probably the secret real hero of the squad. And we did it. The credits roll. Amid the montage of memories, we learn that Welkin's voice actor also played the pig. Remember the pig from way back? It also only mentions Steve Blum once, but maybe all these other names are Steve Blum's aliases. Oh, and the war, I guess, ended. There is a distinct lack of a scene bringing an end to the plot. But I guess the pacing kind of demands that we end everything after the explosion scene. The Empire agreed to a truce after that debacle. Squad 7 got disbanded immediately, and that was that. Not even a Star Wars-style medal ceremony where everyone cheers. And Alicia has to face her status as the new god of the nation, the divine savior and such. And while we're on the credits, I forgot to mention this whole time that the game has great music. The only problem with the music is that some of the weaker tracks are used for the parts that repeat constantly, such as battle themes. The cutscene music and the symphonic suite material used very sparingly is a sensational Final Fantasy XII meets Band of Brothers score that does a whole lot of work to make this game memorable. And I've listened to a whole load of the tracks a whole load of times over a whole load of years. I came close to forgetting to mention it, but don't let that fool you. The music is a standout feature, at least in the places where you don't get sick of it. Also, the geopolitical setting of the game is very similar to Final Fantasy XII, with two empires, one you never see, and a small state caught in between. Is the shared composer a coincidence? Do they get the composers to write the lore as well? Maybe that'd save time. Now we need to move on to an epilogue, because we can't just abandon the story there, can we? So much was left unresolved, basically everything. Can they pull it together with a post-credits sequence? First, we learn that Varrot and Largo got married. Yes, there was a 99% dropped subplot in the game where Largo was in love with the captain. I think it's mentioned somewhere in a character bio, but the only evidence of it that made it into the plot is that it's here in the epilogue. So there you go, they got a happy ending there right out of nowhere. Rosie's Isara AMV song went to #1, and she tours the continent singing about it. Oh, by the way, this ending assumes the war ended permanently, which it doesn't, because I'm pretty sure there's a sequel to this game portraying the Garlean civil war that erupts, because the Queen was an imposter, the Prime Minister tried to sell everyone out, there's a minor revolution, there's drama. Gallia is by no means getting away with all of this, but I wonder if this was written without any sequel plans in mind at first. In fact, it mentions the Queen was accepted even as a Darkson, and I think that's what gets retconned immediately by the sequel. We'll talk about the sequels in a second. What happened to the so-called protagonists of the story? We learn that Welkin went back to Brule and became a teacher, his original goal, and he goes on nature hikes and stuff. And Alicia went to bakery school and became a certified bread maker, running a pop-up stall in the Brule Square. Oh, and she married Welkin, but I guess we knew about that already. They have a nice boring life in town. And you know me, I'm like, well, that's not very gritty, is it? Topic. It can't all go back to normal, can it? That's the question. The happy ending to the war is that we go on as if the war didn't happen. And I guess that's the happiest ending you can get. It makes sense. We're sort of saying, well, the best thing that could happen in the war is that it doesn't impact very much and we can go on as if it didn't happen. The problem with that, from a writer perspective, is that if your ending is basically saying it's as if the plot didn't happen, that's a kind of weak ending because it devalues the plot. But we have to ignore quite a lot of stuff to achieve this. That's the real point I wanted to get at here. Yes, Alicia is an actual god, but no one cares. No one tried to put her in a nuclear reactor to generate power. Clearly I wasn't in this timeline. And yes, peaceful, kind-hearted Welkin saw his sister and best friend die in front of him, along with 95% of the nation's entire military. But his brain just perfect parried that trauma, and he doesn't act any differently. No neurons did anything in response to this unusual stimulus. Was it all just an act? Does he secretly care immensely and is ignoring it all to put on a brave face like in the anime? I think the canon game answer is that he really wasn't affected, and the anime answer is that he was obliterated and then fakes everything from then on. This is the same thing as earlier. The game doesn't want to have, like, PTSD in it. It doesn't want to have little people getting adversely affected by war, that kind of vibe. It really wants to be a sort of, that war was a good team-building exercise kind of ending. And Welkin bagged a literal god-tier girlfriend without even trying. What does Alicia get out of this? I don't know. I think she was impressed at how good Welkin's fish drawings were when they first met, and that was enough. She doesn't really seem to like Welkin, nor does Welkin really seem to like her. Maybe if they were the protagonists of the game for longer, there would have been time for them to interact in some way. Remember that time we found a dead guy in a hut in the woods? Ah, romantic memories. I think a true ending to this story would be so different to this that there's no point in suggesting changes. I mean, it needs to take the Valkyria thing into account, so it definitely won't be a it went back to normal ending. Welkin and Alicia would stay in the military world, for sure, and international scrutiny would come down on Alicia. The Federation might invade to get her. It's the biggest possible deal in the game world. The unresolvedness of the plot is overwhelming, which is why it's very cheeky to just throw in this, none of that even happened type happy ending. But of course, it's not actually the ending, is it? Because there are 4 numbered Valkyria Chronicles games, and probably more without numbers. I'm not even totally sure. I presume that number 1 was made on the assumption of it being standalone. So it's a pretty complete package, if you ignore all of the abandoned and dropped plot threads, including the main plot. I'm not even really criticizing this because I write stories for fun. I invoke and abandon plot threads constantly. It is fun. It's even realistic sometimes because that's how things are. Maybe Largo never told you he was in love with the captain and just kept it under wraps. But they were secretly dating. There's just no reason you would ever learn about that to set up a marriage reveal. Let random stuff happen or not happen for reasons we don't know about or don't understand. That's fine. But in this case, there is a sequel, which I have played, only I don't remember it well enough to comment on whether it solves any of the plot questions I have. I think it's about a civil war between royalists and someone else, maybe different claimants. It might be racism versus begrudging acceptance again. And all I remember is it's way more anime and annoying than VC1. It's less gritty and less serious. I don't know anything about VC3. I don't think I've even seen one frame of gameplay or heard one word about it. And I have played VC4, which is basically VC1-2, taking place in parallel from the perspective of the real army. Parallel to the first game, that is. And it turns out the real army also fought Valkyria and fought giant tanks and had anime moments. And that reminded me, I wanted to mention this game does tell you which characters are gay. It outs all of them, and you get buffs for it. Like poor Dallas has the loves girls potential, and you get a buff if she stands near another girl in the squad, and she says, it'll be our own secret garden, or something like that. Which I mention as remarkable only because it's a Japanese game from 2007, and I bet this was very controversial. I bet it had to be hand-waved away as, they're just good friends, sort of thing, like with the producers or reviewers. And here I am, a degenerate future citizen, turning the squad into Dallas's personal harem so I can get more buff synergy going. What was I talking about? Oh yes, the game ends. But the story the game was telling remains almost unresolved, revealing that it was never really supposed to be about all of that. It's Welkin's story, not Gallia's, not Europa's, not Alicia's, not even the Valkyria's, despite the name of the game. And the ending of Welkin Chronicles is that he got a wife and kid and never did anything else of note. Maybe the war and stuff didn't come to mind after that, no more wars happened, and when the Ragnite ran out, everything went fine. And we can blame all of this plot stuff, by the way, all of my complaints, on Irene Collar. Remember right at the start of this I told you how the game is a gamification of an in-universe book, a confusing setup. So the book is basically only about the parts that happened to Irene Collar that she knows about. So that's the genuine canon reason we can invoke for any plot hole. It was never meant to be the complete story, so I can't complain that this, that, or the other thing is missing. Irene wasn't there when Welkin had a breakdown. Irene never found out that Alicia was later abducted by the Federation. All of this didn't happen before the publishing of this book. So maybe an exciting continuation of the plot, with many secrets missed already, is still available without breaking the canon. We need Valkyria Chronicles 1-2 for real this time, where it's a book by Alicia as like a 40-year-old, and it's a sort of here's what really happened book, and this time we learn how offended she was by Welkin's oblivious rudeness, and what really happened to drive her to suicide in that nuclear bomb threat scene, and how her elevation to royalty as a new Valkyria brought tumult and chaos and blah blah whatever. I've got a fan fiction to write, so let's move on. That was Valkyria Chronicles then. We'll do a proper sum up in a bit, but first I want to highlight another take on Valkyria Chronicles, One I will dedicate less time than planned to because of A, how long this has got already, and B, a reason that will become evident shortly. You might have noticed I skipped a lot of optional stages in this game. I would estimate there are about 10 battles I didn't do, including the beach episode chapter. Why would I skip that? Well, my idea was I was going to play the game again with a fan-made hard mode. So I wanted to save all of those stages for later. Here's the story of why that didn't work. I'm talking about the Imperial Onslaught mod, a mod that greatly increases the difficulty of the game. The full list of changes was massive, it was novel length, but there are 5 main things they changed, most of which I guess aren't what I was looking for based on this commentary, but I went for it anyway. Number 1, the enemy have the same stats as you. You probably noticed that Imperial soldiers really struggle to kill Galleons, and this was partially because Galleons just have higher numbers attached to them. Now it's pretty much the same in this mod, allowing the Empire to do the sorts of things the player was doing, like run into a base and mow stuff down without dying to interception fire. Number 2, scouts only shoot twice instead of 5 times, and are generally not the all-rounder powerhouses anymore. You're supposed to use them for special things, making them much less useful. Number 3, you have finite ammo. Whenever you shoot or intercept, you use up your mag. Each soldier has 2 or 3 mags. You can and will run out of ammo, whether attacking or defending. Number 4, you have fewer command points, which makes everything all round harder, and reduces the advantage of always going first too, as now the enemy will end up having a good first turn, because you won't have managed to kill much of the stuff that spawned near you as was intended. And number 5, some enemies are replaced with superior ones, like here in Vassal, the shock trooper on the roof outside the alley is now a Gatling gun that will kill you instantly if you try to run down there, as per the usual strategy. With these changes, it's a totally different game. Having the enemy do similar amounts of damage to you means that interception fire is absolutely brutal. You cannot take one step in the wrong direction, or one step at all in some cases, as I was quickly learning. Even here, in the first Squad 7 mission, I'm fighting for my life over the spawn point. Alex perma-dies, and the enemy keep pushing. It really gives you this totally reversed experience, where what's happening to you is exactly what you were able to do to the Empire. It feels like playing against another player in that regard. The playing field is leveled on a per-guy basis, and the Empire have more guys than you, so now you're in massive trouble. It doesn't help that my RNG wasn't quite good enough here. And with around 3 fewer command points per turn, plus more points needed to get a kill or make a move safely, you can end up spending a whole turn trying to deal with one enemy. The mod does recognize this, so you have like 10 turns to get an A rank. This was the idea that first attracted me to the mod. This is what I was looking for. A mod where the time limit isn't so strict, because I wanted to do a kill all the enemies on every map challenge run, and not to have to grind, because doing that would get you an E rank and no reward every time. And yes, I was then trying to kill all the enemies in this mod, which didn't help how badly I'm doing, no doubt. The battle turns into a grind. It's more like the sort of tactics shooter I was perhaps imagining, where staying in cover is essential, staying out of line of sight / range is essential, and you one by one move up and take pot shots, grinding the enemy down, making use of your ability to infinitely regenerate troops via the medic and the redeployment thing. The one advantage we have over the Empire. It's way more warlike, this approach. After a long time, I did achieve my goal of killing all the enemies and taking the point and getting the A rank in turn 10, so thanks mod, in vanilla. By the time you've taken 10 whole turns, you're in the middle of the campaign, and this is the first real mission. Now, we've got a real Valkyria Chronicles experience right here. There's one change though I didn't tell you about, one that really shakes things up more than you'd think. Imperial snipers can intercept you and have infinite ammo. I think all of the Imperials have infinite ammo actually. This is best demonstrated here on Skirmish 1, the easiest mission in the game outside of the tutorial. Boom! First frame of your first turn, 90% health down. because the sniper in the back corner of the map can see your spawn point, and will shoot anyone who does anything immediately. This is real trouble. It even does damage when the shot misses, if you look very closely at Cody's run there. This is oppressively difficult all of a sudden. Snipers intercepting was actually a thing in vanilla, but only certain rifles allowed it, which in practice meant I never saw it happen. Here, it's standard, and it means you really have to think about what you're doing, which in many ways makes the game better. Everything matters more when everything comes with huge risk attached. But the slowness of the game's animations then comes into play. It's not the most fun game to experiment or try different things in. So you kind of need the first thing you try to work for it to be fun, not really for any game design reason, just because stuff is slow and unskippable. We need a classic disable animations mode that many tactics games will give you to avoid this issue. Getting the Edelweiss to take out the sniper is key to freeing up the infantry, and it's doable after that. But even just running forward with a scout is a risky proposition. No ICBMs here. Firstly, because the orders have been nerfed, and more importantly because the mod advises you to not use Alicia. Why? Because story characters can perma-die now, and this will break your game, as certain missions require that they be alive. They're just piling on the pressure here, and you barely get any reward for completing that first skirmish, so any hope of grinding is gone, especially as you can perma-die when grinding. It's not safe to try this. Check this out though, the game now tells you the defense stat on your classes. That's a massive step forward. It also now tells you the percentage chance for potentials to trigger, which is really helpful, especially as it turns out that lots of them are 100%. The mod author totally reworked the potential system in a complex way to make it all more important, and they secretly rebalanced each individual squad member to be good at certain things. So all scouts aren't equal anymore, like some have more evasion, some have more accuracy. I don't know if you can even see this, but supposedly there are 3 subclasses to each class, de facto anyway, because of these stat changes. It's all too much really. The game doesn't need any of this to be rescued. I guess that's going to be my overall point about Imperial Onslaught. I think it just needed to let you take more turns, and to ask you to capture all of the bases and kill all of the enemies. That's not necessarily a hard mode, but a fun mode. That's the different gameplay style I was looking for. You can do it in vanilla already if you like, it's just that the game will dump on you for it. But I guess that makes it a hard mode, doesn't it, because you won't be able to level up as much. I should have just done that, because now we head into the absolute trauma that is Vassal East Bank, the stage that made me quit the game for good. I have 3 hours and 45 minutes of footage of me playing Vassal East Bank in Imperial Onslaught. Again, that's about as much gameplay time as it takes to get halfway through the entire game, and this is a stage that can be completed in 1 turn. In vanilla, this mod really makes things a little different. I don't even really want to explain it. The horror, the repeats, gradually carving out the most supremely optimal moves to just barely survive. Oh, and you get game overed if you take more than 10 turns on this mission, so you can't even take a slow grind approach. The whole east side of the map is covered by a sniper, and the easternmost route is covered by a Gatling gun, so my goal of killing all the enemies is hampered by the fact I can barely get anywhere near half of them. The sniper is absolutely oppressive, and single shock troopers will just ruin any attacking position you try to establish. Because you have so few command points, you aren't moving your whole squad. The front line will always be 1 or 2 guys who can't survive a mag of attacks. So that's trouble. The other trouble is that the enemy have tanks, and when I tried to use the Edelweiss more to provide cover and take out the sniper, I would lose most of its health and have to pull back behind the first base to avoid tank sniping. Which is no help for my infantry, who can still be headshotted by tank shells from across the map, no-scoped. The ludonarrative resonance here is so mercilessly strong. This attack in-game is supposed to be some impossible feat that Squad 7 somehow achieves. And we feel it here. The Imperial force is way stronger than you. You don't have any super soldiers to counter this anymore. They've got like 5 tanks and the infinitely summon infantry reinforcements. It was a grind. A grind where I was being pushed back and back, actually losing progress, unheard of in vanilla, seeing my positions wiped out, and in the end the enemy just stroll up a Lancer to the hidden Edelweiss and blow it up. Again, it feels like I'm the game, and the player is beating me with the standard game tactics from vanilla. This makes sense. You really can't defeat a whole garrison with 1 tank and 7 infantry. Welkin's plan sucked. Why are we attempting this? 3 hours of attempts to go from here. Let's see some clips while I talk about other things. I switched to using the secret destructible wall approach after discovering it by accident at some point, but that didn't really make things easier. Most of all because the enemy only needs a couple of shots to kill the Edelweiss, so a single Lancer can just come round a corner and shoot you over and over until it's game over. The AI is really playing the objective. They only need to kill your tank to win, and they will try and do it. But if you don't bring the tank up to provide interception fire and cover, they will just use shock troopers to wipe out everything else you do with your infantry. It's a real tightrope. So to summarise my experience with Imperial Onslaught, it's a magnificent work of modding, but it's so merciless that all plans I had of actually playing it went out the window, because I don't have 5,000 hours to get sweaty with it. Although if I hadn't just played the entire game, I probably would have appreciated all of this a lot more, I suspect. Perhaps one day, full sweat, all A ranks, all enemies, all bases, Imperial Onslaught Challenge will become my #1 video. For now, I was actually defeated. Let the Empire take Gallia. They just wanted to steal the Valkov. Let them have it. It sounded like Maxi was going to use it to destroy the Empire. So Gallia might even be in a stronger position to rebel later if we preserve all of our fighting-age teenagers for then. Instead of all that, let's think back and talk about the game. The vanilla game. Valkyria Chronicles is like playing a nice game of chess. You sit down, the board's laid out, you're ready to go. However, to your right is another, smaller board with only 2 columns and a couple of enemy pawns on it. Your opponent tells you that you can place any piece on that other board instead, if you like, and also tells you that the only way to win is to get any piece to the end of that second board. You, a poor naive fool, ask then why is the first board even there? Your opponent simply stares at you in silence. They gesture to the board, inviting you to play. This is your real test. The objective of the game was not to play chess, but to realize you can just put your queen on the second board and win in the first or second turn, aka Alicia's Gambit, aka the ICBM. But I like chess, you whisper meekly. Your opponent smiles ear to ear. Oh, you can play chess if you want. Yet in victory all you achieve is the ability to move your pieces to the second board, which you had all along, in fact. And if you win like that, I'm docking your prize money by 80%. This is hardly a game at all. Why did you even set up the first board, you cry.
Because I hate you,
your opponent growls. And that's roughly how the first game testing sessions for Valkyria Chronicles went, and it really stuck. The game that rewards you for not playing it, someone wrote on a whiteboard, and here we are. Now I'm being silly here because a stronger analogy would be that your opponent doesn't tell you about the second board. However, you can see on the table next to you there is a board there, and all the judges are exclusively looking at that board. So maybe it's important. By which I mean the game of Valkyria Chronicles is noticing that a skip to victory exists, and that it's much easier than the normal game, then moving over to that proverbial board and playing exclusively there instead. The first board's role then is to give you something to do if you don't notice the second. And I think it's suddenly time to drop this boards analogy. Maybe somebody is picking up on the core problem I'm gesturing wildly at with a mouthful of chess pieces. In playing the low turn count intended game, which is perfectly good and nice and puzzly and such, you do miss the original turn-based tactics squad shooter type thing that Valkyria Chronicles at first promises to be. And is in fact, if you don't mind the game calling you an idiot and a loser in every post-battle report for playing like that. Somewhere in between vanilla and Imperial Onslaught is the formula for a really immersive and thoughtful advancement of the turn-based tactics genre. And to bring this back to what I was ranting about way at the beginning, I wanted this style of game to be done with the more serious tone of something like XCOM, and I genuinely thought that it would happen. I remember thinking, now this thing has been released, it will be influential. And it wasn't. XCOM's dead, turn-based tactics, as it exists in its diminished state, is still pilfering the 90s for its mechanics. We're in this timeline where, if I want the successor to XCOM, I've got to play Xenonauts or something and just get mad about it the whole time. And the reason I get mad is I'm always thinking about Valkyria Chronicles while playing those games. The innovations VC brings are so basic that they are themselves open to criticism. Like, it's still bad in Valkyria Chronicles, but also they're wearing the "this is as good as it gets" crown, so I have to praise them. Can't line of sight just be literal line of sight now? It's the future. Can't aiming be literal aiming? It's the future. Can't moving be literal moving? We don't have to simulate what moving would have been like because the game was designed to run on Windows 95 or something. Can't Overwatch just be a natural behavior like in real life and things? Can't the squad members just be racist to each other all the time? Well, maybe we don't need everything from Valkyria Chronicles, but like one or two of the most basic changes taken and then translated into some sort of Western barbarian isometric turn-based tactics kind of thing, that's what the genre needs right now. And the genre is still in this low-hanging fruit era where even basic innovations haven't been tried yet by big publishers. Except Sega in Valkyria Chronicles, which apparently didn't do well enough to keep going, potentially proving, without a doubt, that I am wrong. However, ladies and gentlemen, people of all shades of hair colour, I believe that one day someone will make XCOM with third-person shooter-inspired aiming mechanisms, and it will be like the first drop of rain after a drought. And I know there are games like this, down in the underground. I even think I have games that were advertised specifically as XCOM Valkyria Chronicles mashups. I even think I remember someone emailing me saying that things like this existed. They'd heard me ranting about this years ago somewhere else, probably in an XCOM commentary. I think it's all, though, going to be like one-man indie studio type productions. But again, that might be all we need. I should probably actually look at them. The problem is, that's not how OFFED rolls. I'm not playing video games to have positive experiences. I am playing them to generate talking points for my stupid internet video podcast rant thing. Which you've been very much enjoying if you got this far, clearly. We just need a load of money to be injected into this idea, perhaps a corporate partnership. Like, I'll make a game called M&M's Tactics, where different coloured M&Ms have a war. And obviously that's going to lend quite well into the characters being racist, as I requested. And you'll have the Blitz system, it'll reboot the genre. I'm going to pitch this to M&M's HQ. Like, how about a promotional video game where it's World War II with M&Ms and the red ones are trying to enslave the green ones while fighting the blue ones. And it's got great interception fire mechanics and has 17 characters voiced by Steve Blum. So, what was my point? I think it's this. Thanks for watching my Valkyria Chronicles commentary. As I said at the start, it's one of the games of all time, extremely memorable, a shining beacon in a dying genre, and itself also evidence perhaps of why the genre is dying. It's on the absolute verge of being a really good game, as little as changing the turn count numbers in the rating system. We might be talking 30 minutes of dev time away from gaining 2 or 3 points out of 10. It's so damn close. It's the guy who gives up digging the tunnel to the diamonds meme. It's definitely moddable into a near-perfect state, that much is obvious. It's only that the guy who made Imperial Onslaught got too serious and scared me off. Or I think, more realistically, I don't have time to play an extremely hard take on Valkyria Chronicles, even if I would happily call for such a thing to exist for others. There can be little doubt I will eventually return to talk about at least VC4, probably very much along the same lines as this one. Watch out for that in the future. The next game on the chopping block is another standout title in the world of strategy games, Beyond All Reason, a little free-to-play project that's got the industry on the ropes, and yet is also absolutely prime for complaining about. As I think any Beyond All Reason player will happily tell you the moment they transition from thinking about how cool it is on paper to actually playing it. More on whatever I've got on my chest there in a future video. Well, I made this video instead of working for money, instead of participating in society, so if you value my wasted life, why not drop a like and subscribe? I don't really know why I made this, and I don't really know why I'm going to make more videos like it. It's not worth it for me, thanks algorithm-sama, but it's the brainworms. Like, comment and subscribe, amen.